Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Burn the Corporate Fiction. I hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or evening on this corporate tax plantation that we all live on. Tonight, we are going to be talking about, we're going to be discussing, well, what we have been discussing. And it's how they've placed us all under a trust venture, and they use us basically as batteries to power and corporate cannon fodder to go fight wars and whatever to power their industry and their creation of AI and all this other stuff that they want to use to further enslave us. And they're using our own credit to do it, which is amazing. And so it's tonight's show is called A Republic on Probation, and that is because that is exactly what's going on. Probate. To be on probation is to have your will taken from you. Okay, so think about this in a criminal sense, right? As if you get in trouble, you're put on probation, and you now have to do what someone else tells you to do instead of doing what you will, right? Well, that's the reason they call probate. And that's actually what all court is right now. It's all run through probate before it goes into its various venues under probate. But probate is the invisible overarching jurisdiction, which is ecclesiastical, meaning priest class. That's why they wear the black robes. They don't wear blue robes or any of that stuff because you're both presumed dead and you're an infant, right? So you're a decedent, I suppose, is the word the IRS uses, which is somewhere in between life, death. We don't know. We don't know what they are, right? So your IRS master file will label you as a decedent. But anyways, sorry I took the last couple weeks off. Well, actually, last weekend I did an interview with Crypt Rick. He was supposed to upload that to his YouTube channel. I was informed, I think today or yesterday, by a subscriber that he still hasn't put it up, and I am going to follow up with him and see if I can. Well, of course, I'll probably just get a copy of it and upload it to Burn the Corporate Fiction on YouTube and Exposing Bar Pirates and the Central Banking Cartel on Rumble. But let's see. So we've got a few people with us already. We've got Eldon Bean, good to see you. Hanson Howard, Beyond Elemental, Mojo Shop. Those are the ones I see in the chat, and I'm sure others are watching as well. Mojo Shop is actually going to be my co-pilot this evening. So let's go ahead and bring him up. How you doing tonight, Mojo?
I'm doing all right. If everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Sounds good.
Good.
So we also have Ryan1778 has joined us on the Rumble side. Good to see you, man. Yeah. So
And
you've had you had a good time at Flattoberfest. You've gearing up for Mojo court this week. He actually, the judge asked him to adjourn the case because he filed an at-law, meaning common law counterclaim on a traffic ticket, and it just threw a huge wrench in their otherwise smoothly running gears of piracy. And they don't really know how to respond to it. And now, privately, not on the show tonight, he's going to present his case viva voce, which is the living voice. It's the highest law. When it's written down, it's a dead letter, right? And he's going to take command of that court because the at-law case is a superior court of record, and any other inferior court that had jurisdiction over it automatically comes under the superior court. So that's the trick with that move, filing an at-law counterclaim on any kind of stupid district court case that they try to put on you or whatever, your little municipal courts. You just file at-law counterclaim and take over their court. And then you basically control it, dismiss it, or if they're being belligerent, there's a lot of different avenues you can go with that. Well, I'll do a show on that one of these weekends here coming up. I'm going to try to actually at some point stream more than once a week, but busy guy. So, as I was telling Mojo before we even came up, what I'm talking about is the probation of your will, right? So what they do is they presume you dead, they presume you abandoned. I've actually went and traced exactly how Michigan has done this. That would be the state that I live in. And they actually created the probate court before Michigan was even a state. I'm not even kidding you. They created the probate court, and I think it was 1827. We became a state in 1835. Or, well, that's when we ratified our state constitution. It's 1835. So they already had probate, and then what they did was they grandfathered probate in. And the interesting thing about that is the probate only had to take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, because it was before we were a state, there was no constitution. It was just Michigan territory. And then they grandfathered the judge in without changing anything except for they gave the probate court the authority to grant license to dispose of the property of minors and infants, is basically the same thing, and these distracted persons. Right. So anybody that they could deem unfit or incompetent, they're automatically just, first thing they did was grant license to take control of their estates and administer their estates. And when you start reading some of the, it looks like we lost Mojo for a second. When you start watching or start reading some of the later, like even just 20 years, say like in the 1850s, some of the statutes that were written, they're already way outside of their authority, their jurisdictional authority, unless they've been able to somehow turn the majority of the state into infants before then, which I believe that they did somehow figure out how to do. But the whole thing is to be a sovereign, to be one of the people, you're supposed to have a house and an estate and a seal, right? And that house, the very first political subdivision of any society, right? It's the very first form of government. It's the form of voluntarism, right? Where people, there's the bonds of family, but there's also a hierarchy, and everyone works together towards a common good. And this isn't me saying this. This is treaties all through the Middle Ages, right? Black and all this is how it's looked at. So when you have a house and a seal, it's political protection, right? For yourself. And it also, there's a whole law of seals anyways. And so like when you seal something, the seal becomes its own consideration. A seal of a foreign state validates itself, which is one of the things we're going to be using to do our documents. And other people like at Vocational Science of Freedom and all those guys, they already have done it and they've had some victory. So actually a lot of victory. So in case, because I know everything that I'm saying sounds pretty incredible, right? And it sounds unbelievable. And I totally get it. I always have to prove everything to myself. So tonight I'm going to prove it to you guys, right? Right here, the very first thing we're going to go through tonight. And I don't know if we're going to get Mojo back or not, hopefully. But I will actually, before I do this, I will put a link in the chat if anybody wants to come up and has questions or wants to contribute to the discussion. I'm going to put it on the YouTube side. And if you're on Rumble, I'll try to put it on Rumble. It didn't work so well last time, but hold on. So we'll put that. Let me go on here and pin it. Hey, at least I got the notification from my own channel, so I hope everybody on Rumble did. I did not get a YouTube notification yet, so I wouldn't surprise me. They're not going to like what I'm talking about tonight. Where's my YouTube? Just bear with me. Sorry, guys. I'm going to pin it so that it can remain there for the duration of the show. And then I'm going to prove to you guys that this actually works, and this is what they're doing. That's not what I wanted. My channel. Bam. Okay, pin. There we go. We got that done. I'll try to put it on the Rumble side as well in just a few moments, but let's take a look at this. So, share screen. This is the Colorado Secretary of State. So, let me give you guys a little backstory from what I remember. And this gentleman is part of the Vocational Science of Freedom, and he I can't remember if I think his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend or something like that had his kid at the hospital, as a story that was told on that channel. And I wanted to verify it, which is what I'm doing for you guys right now. But he took the child to the hospital. Guy didn't want his child getting any shots. We all know what that's all about, right? So he went and grabbed his child and was leaving the hospital, and the nurse was being belligerent and trying to be like, you can't take that child. And he's like, yes, I can. This is my property. It's my my child. And he left, and the nurse jumped on the hood, and he's like, you need to get off the hood because I'm going to drive. And she didn't get off the hood, and he drove, or whatever. Cops are called, and don't know specifically what he got charged with, but I do know he filed an at-law counterclaim. Okay. He filed an at-law counterclaim, and he served him with the contract, which is what I've been talking about. Is it's a performance contract that after you claim your estate, after you publish your seal, the seal of your house, which you'll put on every document that you file, and you have to have that seal. Like, that seal is one of the most important things of everything that you're doing, because it's its own consideration meaning it's its own surety, its own bond. So the word of your house, it's like your honor. You're putting your honor on it, and at law, it's so if two people sign a document but only one person seals it, then the other person automatically comes under that seal. So it's very, very, very powerful to have a seal. And that's why all the courts have seals. That's why notaries have seals. That's why the governor has a seal. That's why originally at the founding of this republic, anyone who would be considered one of the people who would be eligible to run for an office as a public servant, let us never forget that they're servants, they had a seal. So like in Indiana, when they became a state and they laid out the schedule for elections and everything, they said whoever's going to become governor will use their private seal until a state seal can be made, because it was already assumed that whoever was eligible to be governor had a house and a seal and an estate. And these old Michigan revised statutes that I'm reading, and I will probably get to it a little bit later, these Michigan revised statutes, they're talking about estates and how so they're basically some and stuff where they're telling people not to. I mean, this state is bad. They had the intention of probating everyone's will before it even became a state. This state, I believe, was founded by some shady commie lawyers for sure. Okay, not that there isn't a lot of good people in this state. I'm talking about the people that started it up. A lot of them seemed to be commies, and they definitely were bar pirates. So, but anyways, they're talking about like, oh, if anyone threatens the people in this committee or their estates and all that, and that's the whole thing. It all comes back to trust and estates, right? Well, you can't have a trust without an estate, and so all of you, every single one of you, have an estate right now. It's just been probated. It's actually been escheated, which is where someone goes missing or dies without a will or whatever, or is a minor and there is no guardian, which is how they presume you to be abandoned at the hospital. And we'll get into that. It's called the Born Alive Infant Act here in Michigan. And so basically you escheat to the state, right? And the state becomes an administrator to that estate of the child or of the person who died intestate, it's called, meaning without a will, and the property escheats to the state, and then the state gets to use it and administer it, right? They're supposed to, like, say in the instance of property, they're supposed to sell it back to the people, but if obviously no, they don't do that. And especially since everybody's presumed to be dead or missing, and the people that are using the existing trusts are infants. So I know it gets complicated. I probably confused you guys, and I'm really going to try to explain it as well as I can. I'm only going to run for probably about 2 hours tonight, but we're going to get into stuff. But first, let me prove to you that this actually works, okay? So I'm going to share with you guys. Now, look up here. This is Colorado Secretary of State, okay? It says right here at the top, sosstate.co.us. Okay, this is the UCC filings or the UCC search. This is where you search for liens. Now, before we even get into this, I'm going to pop over here and I'm going to put the guy's name as Judge Daniel A. Wazel, right? Or is it Walzel? Hold on, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think it's Walzel. Right, so Daniel A. Walzel. The Honorable, oh, sorry, you guys can't see the screen. Let me actually just share the window. That would be smarter, wouldn't it? Hold on. So, this is the Honorable Judge Daniel A. Wazzle. This is his 2021 judicial performance review, right? This is his evaluation. You can look it up. Look, coloradojudicial.gov, Daniel Walls, Colorado Judicial Branch. So this guy, the guy's name is Brett Andrew Nelson, and he filed a counterclaim, took him through the common law due process. And the guy thought, oh, well, you can't touch me. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm a judge. You can't touch me. He's not responding to his claims, his declaration, right? He's not responding to anything. So finally, Brett defaults him through the common law process, because you can hold court. Anything the government does, you can do. You just go down to the county clerk, say, hey, I need you to file this at law on demand right now. Mojo's already done it. Oh, Mojo's back here. Let me bring him up. Mojo's already done it. Works, doesn't it, Mojo? You can just file at law. But you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how common law works. Yeah, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how common law works. Now, when they don't cooperate and you default judge them, or you get them on a default judgment, right? And you just basically notice the default. You can now take that. So you guys see that he's a judge, and you can do this. So Wazzle Daniel A., right? Let's search this liens on Colorado Secretary of State website. Oh, here he is. Waltz Daniel Austin. The secured party is Brett Andrew Nelson, the guy who took him through the common law process, defaulted him, and then took him to arbitration, which is Title IX, USC, that allows for that, right? And makes it binding on everybody, whether they're in the fake government or not. Now, we go to the record, right? Okay. Oh, hold on, it's loading. I don't know if what I just clicked is going to affect anything. But this guy has a lien on every, yeah, so here, let's zoom in, right? Can you see that okay? Can you guys see that? Mojo left again. He's having a rough time with his service. So hope you guys can see this. So Brett's the secured, the judge is now the debtor, and the collateral, right, as per the Colorado revised statutes, right, is all goods, chattels, right, lands, tenements, and real estate of the four debtors. Okay, because he actually sued the clerk and a couple other people as well, are brought forth as liened security as per UCC 9-609A1. Okay, so see the public record documents and all that stuff, right? So I actually have some of the documents he used to do this, but those I will not be showing tonight. They have a lot of personal information and stuff like that, but I don't want to. But this works. This dude put a lien on the entirety of this judge's estate. Any houses, he can't sell them. He cannot do anything with them, right? He's locked these people up. And he used common law to get the judgment, and then used arbitration to award him. This will work because this is what they have done. He could not have done this if he was not right about what they've done. They have probated your will, right? So, okay, Mojo's back. What do you think of that, Mojo?
Well, I've been trying to listen, catching some of them. I've been having connection problems, as you can tell.
Yeah, you definitely have some connection problems. So he basically took everything this judge, or he has a lien on everything this judge owns. Now, interestingly enough, after he got a little excited about getting this judgment, and he sent notice to the judge and the clerk, and I think the prosecuting attorney and all these people, that he just got this award against all their stuff, right? And the judge immediately tried to take and move his house and put it into his mom's name and shit, which is actually a felony. And so as of right now, last I heard about this situation, is they are trying to get the award. What's the word I'm looking for? So why do I always keep forgetting this award? Anyways, the court has to basically validate it, right? One of the like regular courts, and they're trying to all pussyfoot around it, but it'll happen. And either way, even without the court validating the award and getting the cash right away or whatever he's going to do to the estates, he could just take the lien he has and collateralize it, because that's all they've done to us in the first place. That's literally getting a lien like this on each one of us is what they've done to create Federal Reserve notes, except for they did it through deception, whereas Brett Andrew Nelson did it properly through the law, and he's justified. And there's nothing they can do to him about putting a lien on this judge's house and these people's houses. Not a damn thing anybody can do to him. So, anyways, I just wanted to show you guys. That's pretty amazing, right? That's why this is the way to do it. This is fuck becoming any kind of secured party creditor or doing any of that dumb shit playing around in their UCC. No, you take them back to common law. You reclaim your estate, because the only way that they can tell you what to do with your property is because they are administering your estate. So I guess that's where we'll go with tonight, right? So we call it Republic on Probation. A little brief history, and I've talked about this before. We lost Mo, but I've talked about this before, or spoke about this before, and let me get out of here. Stop screen. Okay. So I've spoke about this before, and basically what happened, what's happened in this country is not new. Okay. They've been trying to do this for about 1,000 years, right? So there's been this war between common law and civil law, which is statutory law. So there's only two types of law. Okay. There's written law and unwritten. Well, before we even get into that, that's a little deeper. So there's two types of law generally, and it's causation, right? There's written law, or there's common law, and there's statutory law. Now, common law is based on the laws of nature and nature's God. Okay, common law can never be written. It can only be written about. It's basically do no harm. Okay, it's very sensible. And there is over 800 years of sustained jurisprudence to show that it is inflexible. It does not change. That's why the attorney hates it. Because it's based on the laws of nature. Hey, did you do something wrong? Did you harm somebody? Right. And so now the specific actions and claims and things were developed over time and laid down. And we have an entire body of jurisprudence and case law based on natural law expressed as common law. Right. Now, so you can go and read a paragraph in the Magna Carta, and then you can come all the way to the founding constitutions of one of the states, especially the southern states, and you can read almost verbatim the same principles are laid out in our constitutions over 800 years, or what would that be, 600, 500, whatever. No, yeah, 500 years later, almost 500 years later, the things written in the Magna Carta have gone unchanged all the way to the founding of this country. So the founding of this country is founded upon English common law. And some states even have in their statutes that the English common law is the law, with few exceptions, like there is no king, right? But even without, so even over there, the barons were considered sovereigns. Even though there was a king, the king was an executive office, right? So the king couldn't just do whatever he wanted to the barons. And that's kind of how it's called feudalism, right? So it's basically where the king is the source of ownership of all the land. And so he allows the barons to hold various fiefs or fees, right? Like a knight's fee or a barony or whatever the case may be, in order to manage and work the land, take care of the, and to take care of the peasants and all that, maintain that land. And they have to pay the king a fee, right, for the use of the land. But that land holds a title. The baron doesn't hold the title. The land holds the title. So whoever baron of that land is under that title of barony, right? Baronage. So over here, it was a little bit different, right? We're all free. We're all peers, meaning we're sovereigns, but we have no subjects, right? But, so the whole slavery situation was on its way out the door anyways when this country was founded, and they don't teach you that in school, and then until they saw it as a hot button issue to go ahead and stoke the fires back up, which led to the Civil War. But the difference, so we were sovereigns without subjects, and that's what peer means. Peerage, it means you're a sovereign. It doesn't mean you're equal. Someone's only equal to you as a peer is if they are a peer as well, which means sovereign. So, but the English common law was in effect over here, or is in effect over here, except for it's American common law, which means it's just a few minor differences, meaning there is no king, and all that. There is no feudalism. So all of this over here is supposed to be allodial titles, allodial lands, right? And I should spend a night going through allodial lands and going through how that works and stuff. But allodial means basically means like all oath. And it means you have absolute ownership over your land. That means all the way up to the heavens and all the way down to, Hades or whatever the hell's down there. We don't know. But you own it, right? And nobody can charge you any kind of fee for using it. See, the reason you have property taxes now is because your estate has been probated. Your will has been probated, so you're presumed we'll build up to that. So, anyways, that's how that worked in this country. The government, like for instance, the way that we elect presidents, the federal government has nothing to do with us as state citizens. Okay. I was reading in these revised statutes in Michigan how we're supposed to elect presidents, where actually each county in Michigan is supposed to have an elector. So the people go and they vote for an elector. Then the office of elector is exactly that. It's an office. Okay, they hold that office. They perform other functions other than casting a vote for the president of the United States. But people have to remember that the states are or the United States is their creation. That is actually feudal. Okay, that's what federal means. Federal comes from the word feudal. And it's basically that they're a usufruct of the state sovereignty in the same way that the states are a usufruct of the people's sovereignty. That means they only get to use it as a trustee for the benefit of the person who vested them with it, the property, that being sovereign authority, right? And they only get a portion of it, which is one of the reasons why anything you vest into the state, you also retain for yourself. You can't be deprived of it. And also, a side note to that, Congress being vested with the authority to coin currency, mint coin. Nowhere you're not allowed to vest that power into a third-party central banking cartel like they have. You're just not allowed to. There's nowhere people should have freaking started having capital trials when that happened. There is impeachment charge reserve from Louis T. McFadden in 1933, but we'll go over that another time, because if we could create a grand jury, we could go ahead and actually enforce those. So, back to what I was saying. So we are sovereigns without subjects, right? So each person to actually be one of the people. Like now, if you're an infant, and all this law goes back, that's what makes it so hard to just explain to people, because none of this law was created when we became a republic, or even when England, common laws existed from time immemorial. Law is, and Roman civil law has been evolving for over 1,000 years, right? So these forms of law we basically adopted. We only adopted common law, and then they brought civil law into our country through probate, actually, is how they did it. So when the Civil War happened, Congress, adjourned sine die, which means without a day, because I'm trying to just fast forward to where we are now so people have a better idea. So Congress adjourned sine die, which means without a day, because without the Southern representatives or the Southern congressmen there wasn't due suffrage, right, in Congress. So therefore they couldn't hold any kind of convention, right, congressional or any kind of meeting. So what he declared martial law, right, and then reformed the government into a corporate union, of which the northern states joined that corporate union. So before that, let's see if I can pull it up. Actually, we'll go through this kind of a little bit step by step. It's Penn Hollow versus Stone's Administrators, right? Penn Hollow, yeah, versus Stone's Administrators right there. So when we pull this up, we'll do the Control F search real quick, and we'll go when a union. Whoops, it'll only let me. Okay, Confederate. Let's just look up the word Confederate. Not corporate. Oh, yeah, you're just not going to let me. That's interesting. So anyways, what it says, if I could find it more quickly, I'm trying to think of another keyword. It says when a union is corporate, or when a union is confederate, not corporate, the sovereignty resides within the states. And sovereignty can only be asserted upon a clear title, right? And I thought I'd be able to find it much more quickly than that, but let's see if we can go through. And it's not highlighting it or anything, huh? Hold on, bear with me, people. There it is. There it is. Okay, let me share this with you. So it says right here, it says, but whenever an alliance is not corporate, but confederate, if you guys can see the highlighted word here, because it's case text, unless you pay them $80 a month, you can't highlight anything. And I'm not paying them $80 a month because that's attorney work product doctrine. But anyways, so confederate, it says whenever an alliance is not corporate but confederate, the sovereignty resides in each state. And that's the Federalist Papers, right? It says, and in the histories of Holland and of Germany, the rule will be illustrated and confirmed. And then it says, now the state retained all the powers which she did not expressly surrender to the Union. A state cannot cease to be sovereign without its own act, nor can sovereignty be asserted but upon a clear title. Now, what does that mean? It means you cannot be free if somebody has a lien on your estate, is basically what that means, which is exactly what's going on with us. So just to fast forward a little bit for everyone. So yeah, the union reformed as a corporate union, and then the northern states joined that corporation, and that corporation ended up becoming the new United States under the Organic Act of 1871. They reformed the union into a corporate union. So what that means is when you're in a Confederate union, which is what we were, Michigan is even a Confederate state, that each state is its own country, okay? And they're above their creature of a federal government. But after they, the southern states seceded and Lincoln declared martial law and reformed the union under martial law as a corporate union, then when the northern states joined into that union, they became franchises of the corporation, the federal corporation, right? Thereby becoming under that federal corporation. The people in general did not know that's what was being done at the time, because they had pretty much, have been steadily removing the knowledge of law from the common people's, realm pretty much since they founded the country. I mean, there's clear intention that they've been intending to use probate to take people's estates from the very beginning. The court of probate was made in my state, like I said earlier, before we were even a state. Why? This is a court, only court that this is just, yeah, we're going to make the court of probate. And then they grandfathered it in. And the first thing they did after becoming a state in 1836 revised statutes, they granted it license to take people's property. It's insane. So this, again, was all necessary to centralize the borrowing power and to bring the states underneath the federal government to not question any debt after the war, right? Which there you have the Reconstruction Amendments and the Reconstruction Act. So the 14th Amendment created the federal citizen officially. Okay, officially created the federal citizen. Now, McDonald v. State shows you that somebody was prosecuted for murder, charged with or convicted of murder, and appealed it because he said one of the jurors was an alien, right? And they said, no, he's not. And this is all in McDonald v. State. Anybody can look at it. They said, no, he's not. He came from Germany. Yeah, but he naturalized within Indiana. And you can be a citizen of the state and not be a citizen of the United States. He never naturalized with the federal government, but that doesn't make him an alien because he's a state citizen. So he's one of the people now. You see what I mean? And so his appeal was denied. But the 14th Amendment created the federal citizen. And the reason they wanted the federal citizen was because they needed chattel security to borrow from these central banks that have been trying to get in our country the entire time. I mean, Jackson kicked them out. And that was actually why he's one of the best presidents we have ever had. You know about Andrew Jackson, don't you, Mojo? I just want to include you.
Yes,
I think you're
do.
muted.
Yeah, I
You know what
yes,
you know what he ran on, right? His platform.
Yeah, going to shut down the banks.
And he succeeded.
Yes, he did.
On his deathbed, they asked him what his life's greatest achievement was, and he said, I killed the bank. And he did. And it took him about 70 years to recover from that ass whooping that Andrew Jackson gave the banks. But see, all of this has been working together to place you under administrative tyranny. Okay, so when they created the 14th Amendment citizen, anybody who agreed to be a federal citizen became an infant. What do you mean by that? Well, because you already had unalienable rights endowed upon you as one of the people by God. So when you sign up to the federal government to agree to have the same thing given to you as privileges from the federal government in exchange for protection, you are now an infant. You are incapable of taking care of yourself or guarding yourself against, attacks from foes. That makes you an infant. See, to be sovereign, you have to be 100% able to take care and manage your house, your family, protecting yourself, everything. That's where we were at. So all of these people that became 14th Amendment United States citizens, they became chattels of, which is movable property of the federal government. Okay, I can show you guys a freaking crazy case real quick. Even though we don't have that many people here this evening, maybe people are pissed that I was gone the last couple of weeks, but whatever. I'm sure people will watch it. So let me see if I can pull this DC case up real quick, because this is some pretty crazy stuff. No, DNC, yeah, right here. Here it is. Wow, it came right up. I have this saved on my hard drive, but you can find this on it's a public document. It's so when the DNC sued the Democratic National Convention sued oops, we don't want that one. Sued Russia, saying that Russia influenced the election 2016. They actually sued them in a common law suit. Now, you'll notice something interesting. This is going to tie into what I was talking about, so I'm not like going, hey, look, a squirrel, or deviating from my topic or the point. Look at this. Trespass, DC common law. Look at that. Trespass to chattels. Who do you think those chattels are? So if this whole case is about the influence, the Russian influence on the 2016 election, with Donald Trump becoming president, Hillary Clinton losing, and they're accusing Russia of trespassing on their chattels, who do you think the chattels are? The voters. The chattels are the people. Well, they're not people anymore. They're persons. Persons are not people. Persons are infants, right? They're paupers. They're infants. They're children. They need a guardian, and the government is more than happy to step in under the doctrine of parens patriae, which means government as parent, and be your parent. See what comes along with that. So let me go back to the original story. But this is pretty crazy, and you see it right there. So any lawyer or anybody that tries to tell you, and here's the case number, okay? So if you guys can see that, you guys can come back and look at the video again later, so I don't have to read it out, and I'll even control shift. And you can look up this, whoops, that's a little too far. And you can look up this very interesting case. What the fudge? Oh, that's why. No, we don't want to replace text. Get the hell out of here. Okay, so this is the case number. You guys can go look that up in the future and read this, so we don't have to go through it and bore you guys with all the bullshit is what it really is. But I just find it interesting. So plus we know there's common law. Mojo has a common law case open right now in a court over in New York. So where was I? Oh yeah. So all the people that agreed to be 14th Amendment citizens became chattels. All right. Which means movable property. And therefore the whole way that little protection racket works is the federal government, or the federal corporation as it was then after the Civil War, because originally it was a trust, right? I know I keep going back and forth. There's so much to this, but originally it was a trust. The government are our trustees. Okay, but Now it's a foreign court. Well, the United States has always been foreign. It was the trustees of the states, and the states are our trustees. That's how it's supposed to be, meaning they work for us, right? We are the grantors of the trust. Okay. We are the donors of the trust. And we have all the power. Okay. And the whole point is we become heirs and executors of our own estate, and then we reclaim that status and we have all the power again. That's why that judge that I just showed you guys has a lien on all of his stuff, all of his property, everything that he owns. So these chattels, right? Originally, they said it was made for just the newly freed, quote unquote, slaves, even though they were never freed. All they did was become public slaves instead of being private slaves. Now they're publicly owned slaves. And now they have this little tool called the 14th Amendment they can use to snare everyone into being slaves without them even knowing. It's where the marriage license came from. Now, don't get offended when I say this, but because the 14th Amendment citizens, well, the slaves were considered chattel property. That's what slaves and servants and people that you have under your ward are considered chattel, right? Under your wardship. So they were considered property. When white people, or when the people wanted to marry a black person, now they were chattels of the federal government, and it required you to get a marriage license. That's where the marriage license comes from. You're never supposed to make the state a party to your marriage, but because you're marrying the state's property, right, the state can require you to get permission to do something unlawful, which is what a license is, and then become a party to your union because they have an interest in the issue of the union. Now, the issue is the child, but it's an issue to them because it's the productive value of the union. That's literally how these people look at it, just all in cold, hard economic terms, right? And in terms of securities, right? And issues. That's what it's all about, because what they're doing with the indenture and the administration of your estate is they're harnessing the productive value of your estate to issue debt contracts that they can then issue debt contracts on top of that they can, and they're using it to basically bury us into this black hole of debt slavery while they basically make themselves Olympians or King Midas on earth. And that's what they're doing. So fast forward a little bit. Now, still, even after the Civil War and the 14th Amendment, not everybody was a 14th Amendment citizen. This case right here. Long v. Rasmussen is what we're going to look at real quick. So this was a state citizen. This is 1922. Okay, hope you guys are following me. You with me still, Mojo? Did you find some better service?
For now, I got some, yeah. I'm here.
Okay. Long v. Rasmussen. So basically, Rasmussen was an IRS agent. He came and, well, here it says an inequity suit by Edna Long against, so she took him. She didn't take the IRS, and this is what we do with common law. So this is still common law, but it's inequity. So equity is the enforcement of contracts. See, we still have equity, but now it's a different kind of UCC equity, which is like a real gray area to try to explain to people, because equity technically isn't common law at all, but it was included in Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution because of its necessity to shore up the defects in common law regarding contracts. Common law didn't have as much versatility or judicial discretion, meaning where the judge could actually decide things based on, mitigating circumstances. Common law is very cut and dry. You hurt somebody, right? How did you wrong them? What are the facts? What are the evidence? The jury will decide. If there's no jury, then the plaintiff automatically just gets to either decide, okay, well, I don't care what you have to say in defense. That's literally how it works. So in the judge, there is no judge. It's a magistrate, and they do nothing but push paperwork and basically direct on matters of law. That's it. That's all magistrate. So she took this guy to a court of equity, but you can tell it's under common law by the way that it's written. Inequity suit by Edna Long against C.A. Rasmussen, collector of internal revenue, right, for the District of Montana. And an interesting thing about the Internal Revenue Service, it was originally called the Inland Revenue Service. When we really break that word down, the Inland Revenue Service. So basically it's telling you inland piracy. They're coming inland to revenue you into from your common law. And this is something I want people to understand, if you can. Common law is the default jurisdiction. The only way that you can end up outside of common law is by contract. So there's 5 contracts in American jurisprudence, or I'm sorry, contracts. I said there's 5 jurisdictions in American jurisprudence. Okay. Those jurisdictions are, in descending order, common law, very number 1. That is the law of sovereigns. That means that's why that suit I just showed you guys, where they were filing common law actions against Russia. It's the suit of sovereigns. When there's no contract between you, it's common law. That's it. Did you hurt somebody? Did you trespass upon their chattels? Can they prove that? And honestly, with the fucked up, part of calling everybody chattels, like objectively, if they did prove it, you know what I mean? Then that would be how the court would look at, well, okay, those people are indentured to this, organization, whatever the case may be. They are property of that organization. That organization controls their property. And did this entity trespass upon their property? Well, if they did, then it is what it is. But like I said, that was all bullshit anyways. And we're only their property. Well, I'm not their property, but if you are their property, you're only their property because you have not claimed your estate, your property. That's it. So anyways, says the collector of internal revenue for the District of Montana, and another decree rendered for plaintiff. So she won the suit. George F. Shelton, J. Bruce Kremer, L.P. Sanders, Alf C. Kremer, all of the whatever for plaintiff. So these are her representatives, right? Or her counselors. And plaintiff alleges she owns and is entitled to possession of certain property distrained by defendant collector of internal revenue, right? Which means taken to pay the debt of another person, right? So if your property is distrained, it's taken to cover the debt of someone else. Distrained by defendant collector of internal revenue to make certain distilled spirits taxes and penalties assessed against one Wise as she seeks to enjoin, threaten sale and to recover possession, right? So basically saying that that she's not paying these taxes on distilled spirits and penalties. But here's the whole case. If those are federal revenue collecting taxes, right, that were passed by statute of Congress, then they do not apply to a state citizen. And that's what we're going to get to now. They're very careful not to use the terms state citizen or federal citizen, because that's the whole point. And this is an opinion written by a lawyer. Just because he's a judge, he's still a bar member. He's still a bar attorney. And so they are very careful. But basically, if IRS are trying to collect these taxes are statutory. Okay. And I guess that's what I was trying to get to earlier when I said there's 2 types of law. There's common law and statutory law. Statutory law is private law. It's the law of a man or a group of men, their conscience. It's the law of their private conscience. So we don't think you should do this. We think you should wear your seatbelt. It requires a contract to come under that form of law, always, 100% of the time. Right? Especially in this republic, there has to be a contract for you to come under the law of another person's private conscience. And that's all statutory law is. It's the law of man. Okay. Statutes are not law at all. So when you see in the Constitution the word law written, it's talking about common law. You see the word equity, it means the negotiation of contracts, and all the other jurisdictions aren't in there. So the 5 jurisdictions are common law, equity, which is what we're reading, which is the mediation of contracts, basically the enforcement of contracts. Equity, maritime admiralty, which is basically the law of ship, the law of the seas. But see, this is where people get confused because they think lex mercatoria is maritime admiralty. And while it does, lex mercatoria is that's the merchant law. It's entirely foreign, but it does rub shoulders with admiralty for obvious reasons, international trade and stuff like that. But admiralty is generally the law of like merchant ships and all of that stuff, right? Also in determining prize cases when we were at war and stuff like Penn Hollow versus Stone's administrators, that would be held in admiralty. In fact, the federal corporation or the federal trust that the states created called, the United States, actually dealt exclusively in admiralty. And that was one of the reasons why it was created. okay, so that it would be the one in admiralty jurisdiction in REM and dealing with the other nations and dealing with international trade and all that. So there's the three right there. So we have common law, equity, admiralty. You have military, which again is different, but it does rub its shoulders with admiralty, right? So you can see how these all blend together. The only one that doesn't blend with them is common law, but the only way you get out of common law is by contracting into one of those other jurisdictions. And all of those jurisdictions are statutory jurisdictions where you're under the law of someone's private conscience, right? So you've got now probate is an unofficial fifth jurisdiction, but if you read treaties, as I have, and as I hope you all do, and stuff like that, on probate or the American law of administration or any of that stuff, you'll find that probate is treated as its own class of court jurisdiction. And now it is obviously its own class because you go down to the county and they have a probate court that deals with all the estates and family and stuff like that. And that's actually the most powerful. That's the one in control of it all. The head probate judge of your county is the one that turns you over, or the county you're born in is the one that hands you over to the federal government to be mortgaged off to the DTCC. It's the head probate judge every time. Granted license to do it, especially here in Michigan. Very first power they were given was the power to dispose of the property of infants and madmen and distracted persons and all that shit. So, anyways, let's get back to this. The evidence on her behalf is that the property is the furnishings of a resort or hotel conducted by her, excepting an automatic organ is owned by her and was in her possession when distrained by the defendant. This is proof of plaintiff's ownership and right of possession and imposes upon defendant the burden to justify the seizure by a preponderance of the evidence that Weiss owns the property. Okay. So they were coming to collect taxes from this guy Weiss, right? And her organ was there, and they snatched her organ, and they're trying to say it was part of the property, and they don't have any evidence. And this is the type of Gestapo thug shit that they do without any kind of authority. But let's fast forward down here. So we get the basic idea. And this is why she won. The suit is not against the United States, but is against an individual, which is what you do in common law. Mojo right now is personally suing out the judge and the cop. He's suing them personally, not the court, not the police department. He's suing them. They are personally liable. That's what really scares them. See, because the corporation, all it does is it creates a limited liability for them. It creates like a shield, allows them to do really messed up stuff and hide behind the corporation. Take a certain big corporation or several big corporations we know of just recently over the past few years that literally have killed a whole bunch of people, right? And have also been charged with felonies before. One of them in particular starts with a P, right? But it's got more of a f sound when you say it, right? They've been charged with felonies before, right? But none of the board members, none of the principal officers, nobody gets in trouble for any of the shit that they're doing. And the reason is because they're treating that corporation as if it is a person. And what'd you say? Are you talking to me, Mojo?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So they're treating that corporation as if it's a person, and it allows all these scumbags to hide behind that corporation and be like, it wasn't me, it was the corporation. Well, common law takes care of that. That's not a thing. You go after these fuckers personally. I'm working on it right now. Somebody that's really pissed me off. A couple people, but one in particular. And they're about to be getting my notice and my claim against them. And it's going to be good. And I'm going to keep you guys updated on it. But anyways, I'm very excited about it. I almost wanted to skip tonight's show just to keep working on my paperwork, but I knew I couldn't do that to you guys. So here I am, but it will be shorter this evening. So, but anyways, the suit is not against the United States, but against an individual who, as an officer of the United States, in discharge of a discretionless ministerial duty upon plaintiff's property, is committing without authority, contrary to his duty, and in violation of due process of the Constitution and revenue laws of the United States, positive acts of trespass for which he is personally liable. right? Congress has no power to grant and has not assumed to grant authority to the defendant collector to distrain the property of one person to make the taxes of another. Perhaps it could were the property in possession of the taxpayer, which is not the case. See Sears v. Cottrell. So what they're really saying, it was a very clever way to hide it. What they're saying is you cannot distrain the property of one person to pay the taxes of another. Well, they're two different citizenships, and this gets even more deep into it. It says that let's see, go down, it's right here. Okay, so right here it says the revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers. Right here it says, guys, they relate to taxpayers. These are 14th Amendment federal citizens. And a lot of acts and statutes, especially from just before the Depression, and where everybody had to adopt Social Security and become federal debt slaves, you'll see they call them either, like over in England, they call them electric ratepayers and stuff like that. Here, they call them taxpayers or non-taxpayers to distinguish between the state and federal citizens in the court. So they're not leaving a paper trail of this dual citizenship so that they can do what they've tried to do, which has not worked, because now I can prove it any which way anyone wants that they are two separate citizens. But they want everybody to believe that United States citizen is just how it's always been. No, absolutely not. Black's Law 4th, 5th, 6th, 14th Amendment created, or at least recognized for the first time, a federal citizen as in contrast to a state citizen, basically. So they relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. So the revenue laws are a code or system and regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers, meaning not under the IRS, not liable for the debt of the federal corporation, not under the purview of Congress. The latter are without their scope. No procedure is prescribed for non-taxpayers, and no attempt is made to annul any of their rights and remedies in the due course of law. This is what happens when you become one of the people again. This lady, Edna Long, never gave up being one of the people. In 1922, she never signed or naturalized with the United States. And this is before Social Security. So there was, that's what happened. They got sick of dealing with stuff like this, where the IRS couldn't touch this woman. So that the banking crash and the Great Depression and then the Social Security Act and all of the entire New Deal were designed to force everybody collectively into administration as paupers and infants, right? If you go to the government for a benefit of any kind, you are an infant and they take care of you. Okay. He who accepts the benefit accepts the duty. Okay. It's a fact. And duty and debt both have the same etymological root. So what that means is that if you accept something from the government, they now own you. If you get food stamps, they can do, you're like, oh, you can't take my kids. Those are my children. No, they're not your children. The government feeds you. In fact, you're one of the government's children, because the government feeds you and puts clothes on your back and takes you. You're just a helpless infant pauper. That's what you are. And historically, all through England, all through the 1600s, this is how it works. This is not deviated. And it's all based on the Magna Carta too. It actually is lawful under common law. Huh?
And how's that apply to somebody a retired person collecting Social Security? Is that along the same lines?
Well, it sort of is, except for that's your property that's your money that they've taken from you against your will for years. You know what I mean? It's not like they're giving you something that's not your property that you've already labored towards and worked for. They took it from you. And now they're just slowly giving it back, and they hope you die before they have to, give you too much.
Gotcha.
It's bullshit. Right.
Sure.
But it is the Social Security that makes you a federal personnel, because the Social Security is considered a deferred retirement benefit. And Social Security itself is a trust. So your name under the Social Security is the primary trustee that all of these entities are dealing with. It's the birth certificate, the estate, that they're trying to place into a trust. They're trying to place a portion of the estate. The estate's represented by the birth certificate. And this is where it gets a little confusing for people, right? So just give me 2 seconds. Mojo, if you want to talk to people about court, I'll be back in 2 minutes. And I'm going to go into trusts for you guys so that you guys can really understand what I'm talking about. Because I know I talk to my wife a lot, and she's like, I don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. Like, you're speaking another language. And I need to break this down for you guys. So I'll be right back in 2 seconds.
And indeed, it is another language. that legalese. It's you have to really, you get into it like this, you end up doing a lot of reading, a lot of studying. You learn a lot of Latin, and the way the courts actually are, like Ryan says, circumvent you, treat you like you don't know anything, like you're an infant, like almost like you're a dead entity, where you have to prove you're alive and show you are competent and can stand up for your own estate. And when you do that, file that at law, you should see the judge squirm. He had no clue really how to handle it. That's why he had to do an adjournment so he can study exactly what's going on, because even the judge wasn't too familiar with having somebody rebuke them like this. It's really an awesome process to go through, and I'm looking to go further through it and claim complete sovereignty now through the courts. But as far as this case goes, but as far as my estate goes, I still have more work to do about filing sovereignty, which would kind of relieve me, I guess, from a lot of the statutes and things.
Well, they just can't, not a lot of them, every single one of them, because then you're just under common law. As long as you don't hurt anybody in any kind of way, was basically steal from anybody, because every crime is theft. Mark Passio said that, and I don't know if he came up with it or not, but he said it, and it makes sense because you're taking something from someone. So if you kill someone, you stole their life, right? If you assault someone, you stole their bodily autonomy. You know what I mean? Like if you've trespassed on them, on their property, then you've stolen their privacy, right? So it's all theft.
So, under the old cliche, no harm, no foul.
Right, exactly. And that's where you'll be at, because the only reason anyone's under statute is because they have sheeted your estate to the government. It's been mortgaged to private corporation, basically. And now, because the trustee that is using the estate, every tax, every fee, the word fee, it comes from feudal. Feudal is fee is a word under feudalism. Okay. And a fee is what you are charged for the use of something that belongs to somebody else. So every tax, every fee, that's what you tell the county recorder when you go to find, if they try to charge you a fee, is like, how is it, produce the law upon which you base your assumption that you can charge me a fee for my natural right to use the public record. Like it doesn't make any sense. I need to see this law, right? Because this courthouse is our courthouse. I'm one of the people. Okay. This record is our record. You already paid through the proper tax system and through this administrative tyranny you got going on, where you bring people in here, portion out part of their estate into a constructive trust, and then use it to generate securities of which you take 33%. So show me how you can charge me for this. That's what because actually you're secreting the public record from me, which is a felony, and I'm going to call the Department of Justice. Well, first I'll call the sheriff. Who do you want me to call, the feds or the sheriff? Which one? Because they're your rules, not mine. I'm not under statutes. You are. These are your rules, right? So anyways, this right here, I'm going to show you guys real quick, and then we'll go into trusts a little bit, because you guys have to, it's really not that complex, Anson. So Anson says more complex, confusing system. It is at first until you break it down. What I do with everything that I research is I break it down to its foundation, its fundamental elements, which is what I'm going to attempt to do for you guys this evening. And it should be a lot clearer for everyone, including Mojo, by the time we are finished having this conversation. So we got about an hour left of this show tonight, and I think we can get a decent understanding. But first, let me show you this. So this is Title I, U.S. Code Section 8. It's the word person, human being, child, and individual, as including born alive infant. That's the title of the statute. Now, rules of statutory construction, and this is how they do a lot of their stuff. This is why this is private law. This right here, that's not common law, that's not based on natural. This is private law that they're writing down. These are statutes and codes are private law. And one of the reasons why you have to enter a contract to be under it is because they can do dirty shit like they're doing here, where they just make up definitions at the beginning of the statute, and they can make the words mean whatever they want. And it only applies for that statute. But if you're not looking at the definition, you just read it, you're assuming that you know what's going on. You have no idea what's going on, because the word, this word actually means something completely different. That one, that's why they've usually at the beginning of each statute, they have a big list of definitions. It's called statutory construction. It's very deceptive, and it's done intentionally to confuse you. And sometimes they'll use a different word just to define this word. They'll be like, oh, you look up the definition for this word, it says see this word. And you look up the definition for that word, and so they're applying the same definition, but only one of the words gives the definition. The other one says see the other word. Anyways, that's the confusing complex. We don't need to actually worry about any of this shit once you claim your estate, because you're not under it. I don't care how confusing you make this dumb. They're called legal latches. Okay, that's what these are, legal latches, where they change the meaning of the words and you don't know, and you come in and you sound like you're an infant to them. But you don't have to learn their shit because you're not under it. This is all foreign law. So anyways, I digress. The United States, the word person, human being. Oh, that's what I was going to say about statutory construction. Statutory construction, the word including means only this. Okay, so if you look in Black's law, it means to contain, to bring inside, to, seclude, to lock up. Okay, so when you see the word include, it means only this. Now, if it says including but not limited to, that means they reserve the right to add definitions to it later. But this, what we're about to read, is it says, in considering or in determining the meaning of any act of Congress or of any ruling, regulation, or interpretation of the various administrative bureaus. See that word administrative? Administrative is only trust law. An administrator it's a position in a trust. And so I've shown you guys before on this show that every state in between the late 60s and early 70s adopted an Administrative Procedures Act. And that's where they replaced the entirety of your government with administrative rule-making bodies. So this is how you fall under their statute, is because they have sheeted your estate, right, and mortgage and all that stuff. And now the person using the estate is considered to be an infant, as we're about to see. Then you are not only charged a fee for using the property as a trustee, because it's not your property, you never claimed it. So they presume the real you, the you as one of the people, to be dead or missing. And they figure, oh, somebody just started using the estate, so this must be trustee, part of the property of the estate. And so since he's using the estate and we're administering it, not only are we going to charge him a fee for using it, but we're also going to tell them exactly how, and that includes your own body. That's how they're getting away with all this medical tyranny, is because you're an infant. It's basically like they're your guardian, or they're your warden, okay? And they get to tell you, you got to wear your seatbelt, little infant. Oh, you can't take mushrooms, little infant. Oh, you've got to take this shot, little infant, right? That's what they're doing. See, they don't push it so much here as they do the rest of the world because we have guns. But they're trying to work on that, right? So they know they can only push us so far. But as far as the international community is concerned and how they look at us and how the United Nations looks at us and the rest of the world, this is a world full of infants with just a few powerful corporate robber barons that have taken administrative control over all the property in the world. Now, the reason that they're trying to destroy our country is because we are the only country in the world where the people are the sovereignty. And if you reclaim your estates here, you have full controlling power. And we can really throw a wrench in everything that they're doing. This is how we stop everything that's going on, everything in the world. From all the other lies all lead to this, them making you stupid and an infant, and being an atheist also puts you in this category. They make you stupid and an infant so that they can administer your estate. They need to separate you from the Bible because common law is heavily based on the Bible. It's entirely based on the Bible, as it developed from the Magna Carta, right? Because the very first people to even, the priests were the one administering the law prior to the Magna Carta, and even afterward, until there was a papal bull passed that says they couldn't deal with common law anymore. So it's heavily based on the Bible, and they need to separate you from God. So what do? Right? Well, first you got all these new international translations, but the biggest things they did was evolution and heliocentrism. But understand that as atrocious as those lies are and as massive as they are, they were only done so they could do this right here. Make you infants, take control, destroy your communities, destroy your families. Because remember, as I said at the beginning of the show, that your house is the very first political subdivision of any society. So that's why they're attacking the family. The house is your protection from you're sovereign. Your house is sovereign. Anybody in your house is under the protection of the head of that household legally. And there has to actually be harm proven for anybody to come after any of the property or that person themselves. There has to be. Under common law, it's how it works. A contract with the seal of your house becomes a covenant, and it bears its own consideration, which is why you need to create a seal before you claim your house and your estate, basically. So we'll get into that another time, especially after I get my paperwork finished. I will show it to you guys, and you can use it. And I'll show it to you even after I filed it with the county clerk and everything. And I'm going to use it to tear some people up because I've been dealing with this situation. Nothing. I don't do anything to get in. Like I don't hurt people or anything like that. Just some irritating debt collectors I'm about to smack in the mouth with this shit. Because also credit companies and debt collectors, they are administering your estate. That's what a credit score is. You're an infant. You don't know how to manage your affairs. So they literally created this scoring system for you, and that lets them know how much money they're going to be able to make off you in usury. If they're actually going to get their money back, or they're going to have to punish you, or what they're going to have to do. So, but let me get to this. So the word infant means, or the word person, human being, child, and individual shall include, which means only this, every infant member of the species Homo sapien who is born alive at any stage of development. Okay, Born Alive Infant Act is what. So in response to this makes, anytime they use the word person, human being, child, or individual, they're talking about an infant. And that says any act of Congress, any ruling, regulation, or interpretation, the various administrative bureaus or agencies, when they use the words person, human being, child, and individual, they mean infant. And it says every infant member of the species Homo sapien who is born alive at any stage of development. That means you can be a 50-year-old infant. The reason they use the terms born alive is because that's what your birth certificate says, certificate of live birth. Okay. And another way just to really understand that's what's going on is this is actually called, let's see, is it this one? The Born Alive Infant Protection Act. Okay. And there was another one I had up from Michigan. This is Michigan. Remember, this has been their intention the entire time because they created the probate code in 1827. I had pulled all these up this morning. I was reading them, and then I didn't go to the pages that they were on. But just so you know, I do have all these documents, and I'm actually getting them from the actual statutes themselves that have been scanned. Which one is this? Rules, discrimination, number of copies, printing, and state documents. I'm not sure what that one is, but these are old from like well, this one looks like, or this one's from 1927. So is this the one where they talk about it? Anyways, one of these says basically what they do is, you remember how back in the day, they would be like, okay, well, you leave your child here for a couple days and we're going to take care of it, make sure it's in, then you come back and pick it up, right? When you left that hospital and you didn't express an intention to return for your child, they considered the child to be abandoned. Therefore, as abandoned property, it automatically escheated to the state. The doctor turned it right over to the estate, turned the estate right over to the state. Then the state pledged it to the feds, and the feds mortgaged it off to generate another series of Federal Reserve notes and other securities, mortgage-backed securities, right? And that's how they're doing it. But what I was going to show you is this. Yeah, so this is literally called the Born Alive Infant Act, right? And right here, it says abortion resulting in live birth, surrender of newborn to emergency service provider, medical care report, confident. And they're doing all this through the medical code. Okay, so if a newborn is considered a newborn who has been surrendered to an emergency service provider under the safe delivery of newborn laws, the identity of the newborn's mother and father becomes confidential and shall not be revealed either orally or in writing, right? So, and there's another one, and I'll have to find it before we before I come on, but as I was just reading it, and then my entire computer shut down on me. It does that periodically, and I lost the tab. It's in my bookmarks, but it's an MCL, and it basically says if you leave or the doctor leaves the room, you don't express a desire for the infant to be returned, it's presumed to be abandoned or surrendered, right? So I found that interesting. And notice the similar verbiage here: born alive, an infant born alive, and then over here you've got Born Alive Infant Protection Act. But what they're talking about in their legalese is you. So as used in this section, the term born alive with respect to a member of the species Homo sapien means the complete expulsion or extraction from his mother of that member at any stage of development, who after such expulsion, so they keep throwing that at any stage of development, meaning you can be Mojo as an infant to them. Well, not anymore, but he was. Who after such expulsion or extraction breathes or has a beating heart, pulsation, umbilical cord, or definite movement of voluntary muscles, regardless of whether the umbilical cord has been cut and regardless of whether the expulsion or extraction occurs as a result of natural or induced cesarean section or induced labor or abortion, my bad. But anyways, so you're born alive infant. That's how they're doing all this. And so now let's explain trusts a little bit. All right. So basically a trust, so you guys can understand how this works and why they want you to be an infant, is a trust is a creature of contract, essentially. Okay. It doesn't necessarily always result from a contract, because it can result from a series of events where, like, okay, say your parents pass away and you're not of age yet and there is no will, so you would escheat automatically through a pre-established set of laws under under inheritance, and you would escheat to the state or to the crown, depending on which country you are in, and the state would then take on the duty of the king, which is what they do, is what they're charged with under common law, to administer the estate of the infant until the infant comes of age, or the ward, until the ward comes of age and is able to claim his estate. Oh, look who we got here. What's going on?
They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. Okay.
They are. Absolutely. Dude, some of those songs are
right. I worked out new lyrics to work out for that. It's a immigration town. Come on. We got some Haitians moving in around here now. They're eating pets all around the year.
That's
so
pretty fun.
Eating cats and dogs and some park geese too. We're gonna immigrate and move in next door to you. Come on now, all the Haitians. Right.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, they got it kind of rough over there, man. Well, I do know that is essentially an entire foreign military has been let through the southern border. So interested to see what they do with that this coming November. But explaining trust real quick, and then we can go into conversation between the three of us. Is basically, trust is essentially, ordinarily, it's a creature of contract. So if I buy something from my dad or Mojo, right, and the transaction, the exchange of consideration happens immediately and is done and over with, then there's no trust. But if the contract is to, like, take care of something, or paint something, or it's going to be carried out over an extended period of time, it then creates a trust, essentially, right? And it's kind of an unwritten, unspoken trust, right? Well, when it comes to inheritance and whatnot, there's an established set of offices that happen. So if you have a will, so if my dad passed away and he willed to Corey, Cassie, and I certain things, and then he would appoint, as part of that will, he would appoint an executor. And that executor would then be the head of the trust. That is the only person with authority in a trust, okay, is an executor. And the executor ensures that whoever the trustees are carry out the duties and obligations for the trust to be executed, right? And then there's going to be, so the trustee is basically the bitch of the trust, okay, the workhorse. And then the beneficiary is the one who receives the benefit of the trust. Now, you never want to be the beneficiary, because if you're the beneficiary, that means you cannot claim the estate. So if I could only receive the benefits of my father's inheritance, or he could only receive the benefit of his father's inheritance, then he's not actually the heir at that point, and it's under administration. Okay. So he doesn't have any decision-making ability as a beneficiary, and he only gets snippets from the entirety of the estate, right? Now, if he was a minor, or I was a minor, whoever in this situation was underage, right? But then we came of age, we don't become the beneficiary. We are the heir and executor now of the estate, and we take over the estate. And now we just do whatever we want with it. But if you're the beneficiary, like, people will go and say, oh, I'm the beneficiary. Great, go to jail. It's a benefit. We got to reform your infant pauper ass. Go to jail. That's a benefit. They literally, jails, this poisonous system of healthcare, this is all considered philanthropic. That's how twisted and inverted it is. Everything they do, that's why the main entities doing this are these philanthropic organizations, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, all these. Why do you think they start these 501(c) foundations? Because everything that's being done right now is the administration of infant estates, decedent estates, or infant estates, which is this weird combination gray area. It's like, so they presume that you're the living, one of the people that you are is dead, but that the person using it, who is you, is part of the estate as a trustee taking care of the estate. And since it comes under the court's administration, then they get to use you as part of the estate and get you to carry out the obligations of the estate, right? That they therefore set forth. They create a constructive trust. They draw you into it. It's part of the res of the estate, meaning the stuff of the estate. They draw you into this new trust, this constructive trust they just created. And then they set out a whole bunch of rules for that trust to be executed, basically, and you have to carry out the performance of those obligations: probation, jail, ticket, whatever the case may be. And that's how they're doing it. And they get to keep 33% of everything that goes through their hands as their fee for the administration of the trust. So back to what I was saying, if he appoints an executor, then it never goes to the state. And this is how it was supposed to be, and it should be, when we are the people and we are sovereign. State has nothing to do with it. They keep their filthy fucking noses out of it, right? And it passes down to the people that it's supposed to pass down via the executor. The executor makes sure that the will is executed properly according to the last will of the man who wrote it, or woman who wrote it, however it works. And the testator, it's actually called the testator, or testatrix if you're a woman. And then, so that's a natural trust. Now, what happens is, if, say, he died intestate, what that means is he died without a will. That's actually considered irresponsible. It's a crime. It was a crime in England, and it was a crime in some states not to will your children and your wife anything from your estate. It was considered neglect, right? It was wrong. So they automatically put safeguards in and said the wife automatically gets this dowry. The children automatically get this from the estate, whether you have a will or not. But if you die without a will, what happens is the property escheats to the state for administration. Okay, so it goes to the estate. The estate steps in. It's called interpleading. The estate steps in and says, well, there's no executor, so I'm going to be administrator. So I want you guys to understand this. An administrator is a process of law, is appointed by law. An executor is appointed by will. So there cannot be an executor and an administrator at the same time. So if you go into the courtroom and say, I'm the sole lawful, I come before the court having been found to be living, and I'm the sole lawful heir and executor of the res defendant estate, are there any objections to what I just said? Well, you've just taken the judge off of his seat of authority. He cannot be in there as administrator if you are executor. And that's viva voce, Mojo. You say that as you say, that's the living word. You say it in the courts the same as if you wrote it down. It's more powerful than if you wrote it down on paper and sent it to him, right? So you say, I'm the executor. You can't be the administrator because I'm the executor. That's pretty much how that works, except for you never want to make statements. You just, well, except for that statement, because then they have to, then you ask a question, say, are there any objections? And they have to either object or stay silent. If they stay silent, you have no business in there, and they will. There's nothing that they could say about it. And all of it is probate. Everything's probate that's going on. It's all the administration. That's how they can tell you what to do with your car, how fast to drive, whether you wear a seatbelt. It's how they can tell you what to do with your house, whether or not you can build a deck, why you have to get permission to build a deck or dig or do anything. It's because you're not using your property, you're using the property of somebody who's presumed to be dead and is being administered by the courts in the state. And so they charge you a fee for the use of it because they presume you not to be the owner, but just a usufruct, a user of the property. And so not only do they get to charge you a fee in the form of property taxes and registration fees and all, and that right there, registration, you're obligated to do, because when you register something, you give it to the state and the title is split right there. That's what happened to you in the first place. Your birth was registered. So that already makes you a usufruct of your own estate. So beyond that, that's how they can tell you to do all that stuff, to control your property. So now those two things I want everyone to understand and really think about. There's an executor, a trustee, and a beneficiary, the three parts of the estate. But the alternates of beneficiary is heir, and the alternate of executor is administrator. Okay, so if you are an administrator, then that means you're part of the state and there was no will, and that's how you're administrating. Okay, if you're an executor, you were appointed by will. If you're a beneficiary, you're probably an infant. So if you had a business and you couldn't, and you had a son and you knew your son's going to run the business into the ground, but you want him to be taken care of, then what you do is you create a trust. Okay. And then you'd appoint an executor of that trust to take care of the business, but also to make sure that your son gets the benefit from it. Now, the son only gets a piece of the entire estate and has no decision-making ability, but he's taken care of. And that's what you're saying when you're the beneficiary. It means I can't handle this. So in ancient Rome, if an estate had a lot of debt, it's called beneficium abstinende. It's literally, look it up, beneficium abstinende. He who accepts the benefit forgoes the inheritance. So go ahead, keep getting your food stamps and your Social Security and all that shit. Go ahead. You forego the inheritance, and they would use this as a tool. So if the estate was so laden with debt, right, that there's no way that the heir, if they took it over, all the debt collectors, because all throughout history, there's usually laws put in place, like if the heir is not of age, then you can't collect interest on the debts of the deceased father and all that stuff. Like you have to wait till he comes of age. Well, what he would do is say, you know what, I just want a benefit. It's beneficium abstinende. And thereby never coming of age to take control of the estate as the heir, and thereby avoiding all the debt and forcing someone else to take care of the estate. So it was actually used as a tool, kind of a scumbag way to escape debt and stuff like that. But so that's a trust. Do you have any questions, Mojo? Do you get what I'm saying?
Absolutely, follow that completely. That's why I declared I'm executor and heir to my own res defendant estate.
Do you know what's going on with Mojo, Dad?
Yeah.
Do you know he got the judge to ask him for an adjournment?
Yep. He was telling me that when he was here. When he could get a word in edgewise.
That's because they know what he's done with filing that counterclaim. That's at law. It's automatically a superior court, because all these little statutory courts are inferior courts. And as soon as the matter goes to a superior court, it automatically usurps that inferior court into it. And there's nothing they can do. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, man.
So we'll see the conclusion of that.
When I go in, I'm going to demand a dismissal.
Right. That's what you do, because last time the reason he kept saying no more motions at the end of is because that's your court, and you could have said, I move the court, I motion to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction. You still have not established jurisdiction. You still, you still not have established jurisdiction. If there is no victim, in order to be in this court, there has to be a contract. Show me the contract.
Right.
Where's it at? This statutory court right here, man. It's inferior. Where's it at? There's two types of law: common, statutory. Statutory is private law. Common law is based on natural law. In order to go under statutory, which is the other 4 jurisdictions of American jurisprudence, there has to be a contract or an agreement somewhere. And if there isn't, then there's nothing There's nothing that they can do. And then you use common law and then tort to smack them over the head. You didn't see this earlier, Dad, but check this out. And probably all the people that came in after. I want to show you guys that this stuff works. So this is Colorado Secretary of State website. And just in case you're just now tuning in and you didn't see this earlier, I want to show you. So this guy had a situation with his kid and got into it with the doctors or whatever, and then the cops came and all this stuff. Well, anyways, when he went to court, he basically did what I'm not an infant, you're not administering my estate, and all this stuff. And he actually sent paperwork in beforehand. The judge didn't take it seriously, right? And he already has his paperwork filed on the record, and he has his contract filed on the record, his performance contract, where he can screw this guy over. So he sends him notice of the contract and everything, right? It's basically, if you attempt to administer this estate, then you're agreeing to be a trustee of this estate, and you have to put up a, whatever $1 million bond in case of to insure against fiduciary malfeasance. If you do anything against my will, you agree to arbitration and all this. There's so many clauses in the contract. I actually have it, and it's amazing. So, but this right here is the Colorado. Well, let me start at the beginning, right? So we go here. Whoops, we'll go forward to the secretary. So we go, so yeah, so the Secretary of State, you just go into the UCC or the Secretary of State lien search, and Daniel A. Wazzle is the judge. Now, just to prove that he is actually a judge, he's Colorado Judicial Branch, Daniel Wazzle, right? Here's his judicial evaluation. It's even, same logo as the site I'm on right now and all that stuff, right? So he's on there, and he is a district judge. And here is the security agreement, right? Check this out. Hold on. Let me scroll down a little bit so I can. So he took this guy through common law process, defaulted the judge because the judge didn't take him seriously, didn't respond to any of his claims, his declaration, nothing. Just kept ignoring him. So he gave him final notice. You got to remember, when you open a court of record, you're the sovereign. It's your court. So he's moving his own court. He's telling the judge, and he's being fair, and he's being honest, and he's acting according to the rules of common law, or the process of common law. And he defaulted the judge on trespass on the case, and whatever else, right? Well, of course, so he tried to go and get a notice of judgment from the clerk, and they literally blocked him from going and using the court anymore. And he said, okay, well, fine. You want to block me from using the court? They went and hired an arbitration company, which under Title IX is 100. It binds anybody. You can take fucking Kamala Harris to arbitration. She would have to obey, like she'd have to honor the award if you won. It's just how it works. It's Title IX of the United States Code. So he took him to a private arbitration, and it says right here, he won. So it shows the guy's name who did the common law process. His name is Brett Nelson, right? Right here. He's secured party. The debtor is Daniel Wazzle. Okay. Now, what does he have a lien against? As per Colorado Revised Statutes 13-52-102, all goods, chattels, lands, tenements, and real estate of the four debtors, because he also did the clerk, he did the prosecutor, and he did one other person. I can't remember. I think it was like somebody that was in the courtroom, one of the ladies, and he did all four of them, right? Now, I had to look this up just to be sure that it actually myself, and boom, here it is. And absolutely, he won. And it says everything, all chattels, lands, tenements, and real estate, everything of the four debtors, amounting to $6,898,000. Now he has a lien on their shit. Look, address 1, Mountain View Place, Alamosa, state of Colorado. This guy, Drew, has a lien on this judge's house. Now, according to what they were saying, I guess he got a little overzealous and sent notice of the award to those four people. And the judge immediately started trying to move all his houses out of his name into his mother's name, which is also a felony. So he's got the state of Colorado, essentially, because I'm pretty sure it says with the state of Colorado on this UCC statement somewhere. If I remember when I was reading it. Yeah, well, anyways, he's got the whole state. He could do a private bill. He could do a private bill in Colorado, submit a private bill to them to get this award right here. He could submit and just be like, hey, you guys owe me this much money. This guy was acting under you, you know, and you're liable. He's liable. You owe me this money, private bill, just like Stark. Here it is, black and white. Colorado Secretary of State, sos.state.co.us. This is official site, not making any of this up. So this shit works, guys. Not shit. This excellence works. It really fucking works. We can take them down. Take them down. Right? Why wouldn't you? Can you imagine? I wish I could have seen that judge's face when he got the notice of that, his whole everything he's ever stolen from people for. Because I wouldn't say worked, but I'd definitely say pillage. Everything he's pillaged for is now gone. It's gone. He can't do anything with it. It's all locked up. It's got liens, everything. This guy owns them. So what do you guys think of that?
Fucking slicker and cat shit on linoleum, brother.
Isn't that awesome?
It is indeed.
I'm using it. There's some people, that are about to get.
They rely on so many people not knowing anything. That's like these people in like North Carolina and shit. FEMA's coming in there and giving them these $750 relief, but it's a loan. And if they don't pay it back by a certain time, FEMA can come in and take all their fucking land and shit.
Yeah, I seen you post that. That's a trick.
Yeah, well, look, I was thinking of this. You've heard also that the FEMA and the rest of them are stopping anybody coming in with supplies and rescue shit and helping. This is to force people to have to take that government deal. That's what they're doing. That's exactly why they're doing it. It's not so they can look like heroes or not, because they're not. They don't care about that. They care about getting people under that agreement. They want that fucking land.
See, now the interesting thing, another thing to add on to what you're talking about right there, and I'm glad you brought that up because I did want to talk about that tonight. Another thing about that is so the law of uses, right, and the whole the doctrine built around use of fructuaries, is that they have to maintain and take care of the property in case the heir returns from the seas and claims it. And this goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. So I need people to read, because they're like, Magna Carta, what's that have to do with us? It has everything to do with our country. Our country was actually founded on the Magna Carta, because all the way from the Magna Carta in 1215 to the founding constitutions, the law remained the same. All you have to do is read the Magna Carta and read the founding constitutions of many of the states, especially southern states, which is why they hated them. They were definitely more liberal, or, liberty inclined, freedom inclined, right? Whereas Michigan, as I was telling people that earlier, had intended, they created their probate court a full fucking 8 years before they even drafted their constitution. They created their probate court as a under federal territorial jurisdiction. And so therefore the probate judge, the head probate judge, or any of the probate judges only have to swear an oath to the United States even before the union became corporate. And so, and only the United States, because there was no Michigan Constitution at that time. And the very first thing they did after they became a state was gave the probate court the authority to grant license to take the property of infants and minors and distracted persons and all this and dispose of it for debts and to take money themselves. And it's right in the statutes. And so you can see, when you know what they're doing now, as I've been explaining to you guys, you can go back and look, you can see Michigan's intention the entire time was to turn the state communist.
Yes.
It was.
I said that when I escaped there. I saw the beginnings of that happening when I escaped Michigan, damn near 30 years ago now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to turn it right around. I know it's a bold statement, but I'm going to be a big pain in their ass. So I already am, I'm pretty sure. But with that being said, what they're doing down there, so they have to take care of the properties, right? And they have to maintain it in good order. That's why we have so many, as Zen says on Vocational Science Freedom, that's why we have so many, we have more prisons than any other country, but they're the nicest prisons in the world. And the reason being is because they want you in that your tax cattle. They want to be able to draw as much money off you. That's why we have so many prisons and so many laws that send you there, because then they have complete wardship over you. And you're literally just a battery in a cell powering this huge debt security system built on the multi-billion-dollar prison industrial complex, right? But so the biggest problem for them, so they have control of our estates, administration of the estates, right? The biggest problem for them is us, that we're still alive. So they still have to take care of us. That's why they're trying to kill everybody. It's not about overpopulation. It's about taking your fucking estates, taking the power that they've taken from you and being able to keep it permanently. That's why they're waging that weather warfare against those people down south right now. They want all that land. They want all the resources in there. And a lot of that land, I would imagine, especially in Appalachia, has been grandfathered in. You know what I mean? Handed down from generation, those holler folk and everything, handed down from generation to generation. I'd imagine even some.
I just saw that the people of Chimney Rock are being told that the whole area belongs to the federal government now.
It's not even a thing. And I want people to understand that the federal government can only hold land in trust. Any government or corporation can only hold land in trust. The original point of so the doctrine of a sheet, which is where the state goes, or the land goes to the state. If there is no will or heir, that's a sheet, right? The doctrine of a sheet is necessary because there are people who don't create wills, and we need the land to stay in the hands of the people. So what the state is supposed to do, and definitely not the federal government's not supposed to be doing a goddamn thing anywhere inside the states, right? The state's supposed to take that property, maintain it, administer it, just like that's what the king's role was. So they took on the king's role, administer it. But the difference is that they're supposed to auction it back off to the people right after. So they're supposed to take the land and then auction.
Well, this girl on here says that here's what they're being told about Hurricane Helene. Chimney Rock has been told that their entire town is federal property now. There are dead bodies that are lying in the water. There are dead bodies that are laying under trees and in the debris, and they can't get to their family members. They can't even go back to their homes. The federal government has said that the land, that land and all of those bodies are now federal property. The federal government is not wanting to identify any of the bodies. They're just wanting to bulldozer over it and not even count how many people this natural disaster, if you want to call it that, has caused. Furthermore, people who are trapped and who are getting shipments of supplies there was a pastor that was going door to door handing out water, and the request changed from water to body bags. They need body bags, and the feds aren't picking up the bodies. They're literally leaving them to rot. I got a video here. It's this girl talking about it, if you want me to show it.
Go ahead, pull it up.
That's what we did. Maybe a little reminiscent of Maui.
Yeah, very, very, very. And dare I say paradise.
Yeah.
Right?
It's getting to be a plague.
Whole situation, the worse it's getting. We really need to talk about what's happening in North Carolina specifically. I don't know if this is happening in other areas. I've only heard about North Carolina. My mom lives in North Carolina. She's not too far away from what happened. She lost power for about 4 days, but everything is fine. Their roads were fine. But there are areas where that's not the case. Right now, in particular, Chimney Rock has been told that their entire town is federal property now. They can't even go back to their homes. There are bodies that are laying in the water. There are bodies that are laying under trees and in the debris, and they can't get to their family members. The federal government has said that land and all of those bodies are now federal property. The federal government is not wanting to identify any of the bodies. They're just wanting to bulldoze over it and not even count how many people this natural disaster.
You know what they should be doing.
Caused. Furthermore, people who are trapped and who are getting shipments of supplies, there was a pastor that was going door to door handing out water, and the request changed from water to body bags. They need body bags, and the feds aren't picking up the bodies. They're literally leaving them to rot. So just imagine for a second, you have lost everything, literally everything. You have no food, you have no water, and your family member who perished is literally rotting beside you. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing that the federal government is doing about it. You can't even get a body bag to put your family member in so that the stench stops spreading. How is this America? How is this America? There are people who have been without food and water for 6 days. The 82nd National Guard has been begging to go in and help these people, and the federal government has told them to stand down. Something evil is going on in the mountains, and we really need to talk about it. We need to put pressure on Washington to get our people the help that they need before it's too late. For some people, it already is too late. Please share this message. Please share any sort of resources that you can in the comments below. I'll be making videos here and over on my main page, which has almost 2,000 followers. We need to get help to these people as soon as possible. If you've heard about anything else, please leave it in the comments as well. As always, I look forward to hearing your thoughts about all this down below. My thoughts, my prayers, and my heart goes out to everyone affected.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the feds need some hot lead injections at this point. You know what I mean? Yeah, well, I'm
I
just
agree.
that's where we're heading because these fuckers never supposed to. So let me give you guys a little so I've been reading a lot of old statutes in Michigan, like I was saying, and statutes are not common law, but they're supposed to conform to common law, right? And they have nothing to do with your ability to open a common law court. You don't have to do it via, in fact, you never should do it via statute, because statute only applies to people who are under contract, meaning the government or anybody who agrees to be under said set of statutes. So, and there has to be they have to be able to prove that agreement. Otherwise, because you are sovereign and you have to know that. Not a sovereign citizen, it's just sovereign, okay? Because the citizen that word's been really, really muddied up, right? So when we elected the president in Michigan, this is right in Michigan statutes, I was reading it, and I'd always wondered, like, how the hell did we have anything to do with electing the president? Because of the Congress has nothing to do with us. They're not supposed to be able to say shit to us, about us, or anything about anything unless we go on a federal dockyard or territory or whatever. So the way we elect presidents in Michigan are supposed to is each county is supposed to elect by ballot an elector. And the office of elector is exactly that. It's an office that's held for, I think, like 1 or 2 years, right? And the elector has other duties besides voting for the president. He has duties within the state as well, right? But he kind of becomes like a federal representative. And each county elects an elector, and then the electors cast a vote for the feds. That's how that actually works, because ultimately the state is a creature of the people and the Fed is a creature of the states. That's why they're at the bottom. They're nothing. They're absolutely the dirt under us. They're nothing. Well, actually, the dirt under us is everything. So they're literally just nothing, the ashes. And that's the whole point. And for them to be going down there in North Carolina and telling people that they're going to bulldoze over, do you know that is if they let that happen down there, they're going to know that they can do whatever the hell they want to North Carolina. That's a fact. All of this can turn around if people claim their estates. I just showed you guys it works. And if we all claim our estates and start serving them with paperwork and then taking everything they have from them, things will change very quickly. It's not that difficult. All you need to know is the basics, is public record. Go down in the public record, file I'm living, I have been found to be living. Okay. I'm here to claim my estate. It's a matter of life and limb, which Magna Carta says all matters of life and limb must be considered gratis, which means they cannot be questioned. You cannot charge a fee for it. You cannot do anything. You have to file this now. Right. So basically you say, I've been found to be living. I'm the sole heir and executor of the whatever name is on your birth certificate, whatever name is on the social security card. That's the trust. So the name on the birth certificate is the estate. The name on the social security card is the trust. And any other derivatives, items, sonins, which means names that sound the same or spelt similar, or anything that's derived from my estate, because trusts are derived from an estate. There has to be an estate before there can be a trust. And we all have estates. They are using them right now. And anything to do with my estate. And then you write up another piece of paper, and you could do it this simple to start with. And you have to know what you're doing. So you should be reading about common law treaties and stuff like that. If anybody needs books, I have a whole bunch of them. And you basically write up a contract and say, hey, listen, and I have an excellent contract. I told you, once I'm finished with it, I'll show you guys. It's over 20 pages. So, and it is vicious. It is a vicious fucking contract. Zen at Vocational Science and Freedom has been studying this stuff for like 25 years. He wrote it, and I'm actually impressed with it, which says a lot because not very many people impress me, but it's vicious. And that's how he got this fucking award. But either way, just the very basic fundamentals of it are the same. If you are alive and you are the executor and you claim your estate, then there can be no administrator. And then you put a stick to it, right? You put a stick on it is basically like something to whack them with. And then you draw up a contract and say, hey, if you try to administer any portion of my estate, and it's not just the courts, it's credit card companies, debt collectors, it's even utility companies, because the power that they're selling to people belongs to the people, and they're subsidized through taxpayer money, right? Through taxes, which shouldn't even be happening anyways, but it definitely belongs to the people now. So you write up this contract. If you're administering any portion of this estate, then you agree to be the trustee of the estate under my authority as executor, and you must post a $3 million bond or $6 million or $10 million, up anything up to $300 million, because that's what the birth certificate's worth generally. $300 million, right? So anything up to $300 million, you say, you know, you must put up this bond, $10 million bond in case of fiduciary malfeasance.
I've depreciated.
Appreciate it. And then, so as soon as somebody starts administering your estate, like a bill collector or anybody, right? Even though it's kind of scummy if you've really like ripped somebody off or something, but if it's like an unfair contract or something like that, or something that's just you've been like horseshoed into a shitty situation, you could even do it and be a scumbag and do it for debts you legitimately owe, which I personally disagree with, because I think the only way that this system works and did work and would work again is if everyone has honor and is honorable and honest. Because that's what the seal, when you seal all your, and that's a big part, you have to create a house seal, very simple. Just look at like what the courts do, or the governor, or any of them, that size and shape at the bottom. When they sign something, they seal it because it makes it a covenant. And if the other person doesn't have a seal, they automatically come under that seal, which is another way they get you, because the birth certificate has a seal. And the whole thing with seals actually goes back to Christ. And it's pretty amazing how deeply entrenched that is with this whole system. I'm sure a lot of my subscribers can easily believe that, because you see the devil everywhere. But so you seal all this stuff too. It makes it a covenant. And because you are a foreign state as one of the people, okay, in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, when it talks about seals, it says that the seal of a foreign state it validates itself. Basically, that it authenticates the document you submit when you seal it. So now it cannot be questioned, and the honor of your house is on whatever document you're submitting. That's why you want to seal all the documents you file into the county record. Once you file it into the county record with that contract, and you tell him if he defaults on, you know, if he basically does anything against your will, because that's what all of this boils down to, is your will. If your estate has been probated, as all of everybody's has been all over the world, really, then it's your will they've stolen. That's why you have to wear a seatbelt. That's why they've got it so your car will fucking yell at you if you don't wear a seatbelt. That shows collusion between the pretend government and the corporations, because it's all just actually corporation, robber barons. The way they were able to do this, and especially in my state, was industrialization. They stopped people from being self-sufficient. And by, you know, you go punch a clock at a factory and you learn one specific task, making this one part for GM or Ford or whatever. And next thing you know, you're dependent on the government and the corporations for every fucking thing, because you don't know how to hunt, you don't know how to fish, you don't know how to shoot a gun, you don't know how to do shit. You don't know how to start or run a business, or you don't know how to operate in law at all. They were sure of that. And that's what industrialization did for the northern states. And that's why they had to take out the southern states, because the southern states were self-sufficient. They were never going to be able to take those estates. Go ahead, shut your fucking shops down and do whatever. We don't care. We don't need none of that. We got, 100 acres over here with a farm and everything. Like, what do we need you for? Get the hell out of here. And that's the whole thing. So when you send the judge that document, or you put all that stuff on the record and the contract, you put the claim and the contract on the record, seal it on the record, you get the record number. And then when anybody messes with you, you send them those notices, and then you take them through the common law process. You make a claim through a declaration, say you're trespassing upon my estate, which is trespass on the case. And you take them through the process. You see if you make the declaration, see if they make a replication, which is a response, and it goes through. There's a whole list of the terms for it. And then it just becomes a back and forth of rebuttals after a certain point. But if they don't even respond to you, which they won't, because they're like, I'm a judge. What the hell does he think he's doing? He's just some lowly peasant using some archaic form of law I've never seen before. Well, that law is the most powerful law in the land, and it's the law which you start in before they enter you. The contracts they enter you in start in common law. Also, the law they use to deal with each other is common law. The sovereigns, they use common law or international law, but generally, like it's an international common law, because there's so international law is when they have contracts between each other. But if there is no contracts between two sovereigns, they're just by default under common law. That's how it works. So you send him that, and then once you default him, then you do what Brett Nelson did here, and you just take him to a court of arbitration. Now, the beautiful thing about that is if they didn't respond to you in your common law court process, then when the court of arbitration sends them a notice, they're probably not going to respond to that. It's going to be a default judgment, and then you can make that sucker end up just like this guy, this judge that I showed you. So
That may be my next step as well.
yes, and I think you do have enough to do it, honestly, because you sent them a notice of liability, but you need to sue out that law case as best you can while you're there. And that's the whole thing. Nobody can ever. So all these charlatans and gurus trying to sell you shit all the time when it comes to law, nobody can do this for you but you.
Found that out.
Yeah, nobody can do this for you. Well, I told you that from the beginning.
Right.
I can't be in the courtroom with you, right?
That's why I said
And-
a lot of reading. You need to know what you're doing. You need to understand it, and you actually need to live it.
But it's pretty simple. It's just based on actually what my dad's talked about on his show quite a bit, and I've talked about here, is that what gives you the authority over me? What is it? There has to be.
I like the way he says that. I don't question your authority. I just deny its existence.
Exactly. I just deny its very existence. Exactly. And so where's the contract? What puts me under you? I need to see it. How am I under statutory law right now and not common law? Where's the agreement? Where's it at? Or where's the victim? Oh, there's no victim? Well, then this isn't common law, so where's the contract? Oh, there's no contract. Or if they say your driver's license, and you do have a driver's license, which you should sign without prejudice if you even choose to get one, because then it automatically just invalidates the contract. And like literally, don't sign your name, just sign without prejudice at the bottom. That's it.
In my situation, I happen to have an Alabama driver's license, not New York's.
Well, even then, because they have an interstate compact agreement where they all, yeah. So, but here's the thing, because if they say, well, you have a driver's license, don't you? Say, well, okay, where's the proof that I was operating commercially?
Right.
You have to have proof of that. Where's your proof that I was engaged in commerce?
Yeah. You were talking about the equal footing doctrine.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's kind of an extension. Well, the equal footing doctrine is if you go through old state constitutions, like for instance, I believe it's Wisconsin, it's Article 7, Section 14, I think, but I could be wrong, but it's in there. And it says that all lands are allodial, which means you have absolute ownership, means no property taxes. Nobody can tell you. And if anybody comes on your land, you're the king. You can do whatever the hell you want if they don't follow your rules. And you know what I mean? They could come on your land and never be heard from again. If they're, and it doesn't, that's whatever. It's called the law of the domicile. And that's a common law thing. You are literally the king. So all lands are allodial and feudal tenures are prohibited. See, what they've done is they've brought the system of feudalism that they had in England over here through registry. So a little brief history. Well, do you guys have, I'm hogging up the whole showtime. Do you guys have anything you want to say? I'm sorry.
I'm good right now.
Yeah, I'm just amazed at this trickery and shit that's occurring right now with these poor people, man. I can remember back 20 years ago. Let me see. 96. Yeah, it's longer than, yeah, it's quite a while ago. Hurricane Fran came through here and flooded out a lot of the area here, much like what's happened there in North Carolina. And FEMA was useless as tits on a boar hog, even then. And now, I mean, they've gotten even way worse. I mean, not only are they waiting for good weather so that they can try to rescue people, right? Using up all the hotels and shit to put FEMA people in. Here's a bunch of people been displaced by this storm and don't have houses, but they can't get any hotel rooms or anything because of the fact that they're all booked up with these FEMA people. And then to make matters worse, here's an area without computers and fucking electricity. Oh, here's a debit card that you're going to have to pay back worth $750.
They're being intentionally cruel because they're
Yes.
evil. They're evil, and this is the culmination. This is all being done by foreign powers. I want you to know this is the King of England, and all his people. Okay, because him, the royal family, the international banking cartel, and nefarious actors within, our favorite church. Not all of them. I actually have come to like the Catholic Church, like because in their origins, there's a lot of truth, and they were the only church for a long time. But just like any other institution, subject to corruption without, vigilant care and observance. Absolutely. And the Pope that's in there now is not a Catholic by
He's
any.
evil son of a bitch, man. He looks like the Emperor from Star Wars, man.
First of all, no Catholic Pope would ever sanction any kind of, marriages of the type that he is and all of that stuff like that. He's a total commie. That's all he is over there, right? So, and he's definitely not Christian or Catholic of any kind, right? So, and at the time I'm talking about, when the Magna Carta was written and everything, you have to understand that was a big thing. The church was fighting corruption within itself, and that corruption was expanding and empiring, right? So, or creating an empire. So what happened was basically in so up until 1066, I'll give you guys a brief origin of common law and where usufruct comes from, that we're under right now. And feudalism, what feudalism is. And this is what created feudalism and why you have feudalism in England, or had it, and you still have it. Now you just have it everywhere. So up until 1066, the English, the Anglo people, right, lived in what was called hundreds. And the hundreds were collections of 100 families, where the men of those families would get together in what was called 100 courts, and they would settle the issues of that community. And it was self-governance. Okay. Yes, they had a king. The king was an office, but the king basically collected taxes on the land, handled international affairs, all that stuff. But the people generally governed themselves within the hundreds. And interestingly enough, they were what was called shires. And the person who ran the shire basically collected the duties and imposts and all that stuff. He was called the shire reeve, which is the origin of the word sheriff, which is what our counties are supposed to be like, shires and 100 courts, right? So, well, the shires were like 200 or 300. That's when the hundreds evolved into shires. But anyway, so 1066, William the Conqueror, a Norman, okay, comes over and conquers England, and he immediately abolishes the 100 courts. And what he does is he creates two different courts. One of those courts being the ecclesiastical court that became probate. And so he basically said, okay, this court, this temporal court has authorities over all matters, temporal meaning like worldly, has authority over all matters temporal, current disputes, stuff like that. But my ecclesiastical court over here is going to deal with anything to do with life, death, and anything spiritual, which means inheritance, estate, and all that stuff, right? So when somebody dies, you guys have to go to this court of priests, because that's what ecclesiastical court is, this court of priests, to determine the disposition and inheritance of the property of the dead person. Well, it's about 150 years of that, and the barons about got fucking fed up with it, waited till, because what they were doing is exactly what they're doing now, or what they were doing before they just took complete control, and they were taking control of estates where the heir was not of age, and they were administering it, and they were stealing from it and robbing these people of their inheritance and the things that their fathers and their families had worked for and stuff like that. And so the barons finally got sick of it, waited until the bishop and all those guys went on a conclave over to Rome, and they cornered King John, who was King Richard's brother, but King Richard died on his way back from a crusade. And so King John, and this is the King John from Robin Hood, by the way, right?
Hey, there's Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
He was a bitch. He was a broke bitch. And that's why they call him King John Lacklands. He didn't have anything, right? So actually, before they did that, he did a royal decree where he gave the entirety of England over to Rome, over to the church. Okay. And he said he did this because, he was broke and he doesn't have anything to give to the church. And, he wants to honor Christ the way Christ honored and sacrificed for Christ the way Christ sacrificed and honored for us by dying on the cross and all that. And it was just like a big bunch of fluff piece. But really what it was he was trying to get the Pope's protection. So he gave England entirely over to the church, which Rome has always been part of, London has always been part of Rome. It was founded in 43 AD, and it was when the Romans were trying to conquer the Celts and the Druids, right? And they could only get as far as about London, and that's when they built the Hadrian Wall, because the Celts were beating the shit out of them, and they would fight naked, which is funny because it unsettled the Romans. They were like, these guys are crazy. They fight with their dick swinging out and everything, right? So, as savages. And they built a wall to keep the
That's
Celts
really
out.
ballsy when you see what I did
That was-
there?
I see
That was
what you
really
did. That was
ballsy.
a good play
But
on words.
yeah, I mean, you got swords and flails and axes and shit swinging around, man. Tuck that shit up or something, man.
No, but
Yeah.
they did. Apparently, it was like a psychological warfare, and it worked against the Romans. They were like, they're like, what the hell are
Run up,
these?
stab a guy right before he dies, or teabagging that fucking guy. You know, it's like, yeah, it's humiliating the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
Teabag.
So that's what they were dealing with. Yeah, the last thing you see before you die is some fucking savage's junk in your face. That's pretty rough. But so anyways, yeah, so London has always, and to this day, is still a sovereign city-state, is under the control of the church. And that's why the Magna Carta literally says that we're going to let Rome have its ancient privileges and sovereignty and immunity, or not Rome, I'm sorry, London have its ancient privileges, and immunity, sovereignty, all that stuff. So let me make this shorter real quick. And so after he gave England over to it was like 1213, he gave England over to the Pope. Well, the barons got fed up with the robbery from the ecclesiastical court. Plus, King John was a descendant of King William, who brought the ecclesiastical court over there in the first place. So they got tired of it. They cornered him at Runnymede. Now, they had written up the entire Magna Carta themselves, right? They had written up, he has bad service, he'll be back. They had written up the entire Magna Carta themselves. Well, they wrote it as if King John had wrote it, and then they cornered him at Runnymede, which was a battlefield. And they said, hey, look, dude, we're tired of your shit. Either you sign this or we're going to cut your head off. Which one do you want? Yeah, you want to sign? Yeah. So he signed it. And every pope and every king has honored it through the, I think it's called the Confirmatio Cartarum or something like that. I have it on the computer, but it's the confirming of the charter. And what Magna Carta means is the Great Charter of Liberty. And that's the foundation of ours. So we fast forward to the founding of our country and all that stuff. And we were founded on the common law. So common law existed before the Magna Carta. And that's what I forgot to say. It was considered an abomination to write down law to the ancient people, because they believed it gave man the opportunity to lie without being examined and scrutinized by his fellow men, which, as we see today, that's exactly what happens with legislators. So you weren't supposed to write the law down. In the Celts and the Anglos and the Vikings. The Vikings brought to England the idea that power flows up from the people to the king and not the other way around. The Vikings were the one, and they would actually have something that was called the Wigamawo. And at the Wigamawo, they would get together to settle disputes and to recite the law orally for the benefit of the community in attendance. And they liked trial by battle, which actually was in effect in England all the way up to the 1800s. Could you imagine if you had a fucking pencil neck cop up on the stand trying to tell you you're guilty of using your property in a way that he didn't like, right? And you tell your honor, I invoke the right to trial by battle. What would he do? Right? Because it's an ancient custom and usage, technically. Right? I mean, Aaron Burr shot Alexander Hamilton to death over a dispute, right? Here's Mojo. So it was considered an abomination. Well, when we started this country, that was the whole idea of making titles allodial, is because it eliminated the feudalism. Now, what feudalism is when one person has superior title in some property and allows someone else to use it, thereby giving them legal right to use it, which is a legal title. Okay? That's called usufruct. And that's part of trusts. Actually, the trustee is a usufruct. Well, technically, the executor and everybody is a form of usufruct with different, responsibilities, and because they're using property that does not belong to them. Right? So that's the whole idea behind usufruct, is splitting the title. Now, what creates usufruct is registry. So we had allodial lands here, so there was no splitting of the title. And we also use a record system, county record, not register. When you register something, you give it to the state in exchange for certain privileges and the right to use it. That's it. So when you
Where'd
get
that
pulled
little
over,
bastard go? Why is that little bastard popping out of here like a whack-a-mole back and forth? Mojo, where'd you go, bro?
he's got shitty service, dude.
You need to
Like
get
he's,
that Starlink.
I know my buddy was telling me, he was like, Elon Musk paid for Starlink down there for the people in North Carolina. I'm like, that actually is really cool. And he doesn't want anything back either. He donated it. And I'm like, that must have been a
Don't you
pretty
think
petty.
it was funny? Don't you think it was
Hold
funny
on,
that
let me
he
finish.
oh
That must have been a pretty penny in helium, is what I told him. I said,
shit,
shit, how
they're
much
planes, dude. They're using
are they?
planes. Yeah, man. Look at remember Ukraine? Elon's gonna shut off Starlink to the Ukraine, right? No, it's because it was a no-fly zone, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Ukraine was a no-fly zone. Of course, it shut off the fucking SpaceX because that's
So,
what it's coming from.
so you had
Aircraft.
to have a cover story for it. Yeah, that's pretty funny. They got so much money tied up into that even if they wanted to come forward about it, there's too many people so heavily invested in it that they just won't. They'll probably just kind of phase it out over time and act like, oh yeah, well, it's sort of like they did with the COOF, or they're just. I remember the day that the COOF ended. It was the day that Russia invaded Ukraine. Same day, over with. I remember it clear as day. It's just all of a sudden the day after that, nothing about anything to do with any kind of sickness or anything. It was all Ukraine after that. As the day it ended, as the day I was like, well, shit. I actually told somebody. I said, shit. All we had to do to get rid of the COOF is have somebody invade Ukraine. That was the cure the whole time.
Everybody changed and started having their little mask from their masks and shit to Ukraine flag on Facebook and shit. When do people get the order to do that and start doing it? I don't know. Just like all of a sudden people just do that. And I was looking at this thing. Elon was at a Trump rally. Trump did another rally in Butler, and Elon was jumping around like a fruitcake or something on the stage with Trump. I don't know. I'll have to check that out.
Well, and what they're doing right now is just the utmost. They are like, so it's a form of gaining consent, which is why people need to fight. As soon as I present, if you guys you need to research. If you guys are if you watch my channel because you're interested in fixing this and you do want to know the law, then reach out to me, burnthecorporatefiction@yahoo.com, and I will give you a list. I will actually give you the resources to read and look into this stuff and start to understand usufruct and common law and how to use common law to overcome usufruct. And because you can only be a usufruct if you're placed under a trust, which trust is not part of common law. It was incorporated out of necessity because it's a convenient way to deal with, again, property that's intestate or dies, when the person dies without a will. They have to be able to handle that property and make sure that it doesn't go to waste. Or if there's an heir who's not of age, they have to make sure that the heir gets the property if they're actually not being criminals, which is rare, which is why you always have to watch them. But so there's a necessity for it, but you can't be under common law or you can't be under usufruct if you are of age, capable of handling your affairs, and you have claimed your estate and you're the sole heir and executor of your estate. Right there, you cannot be. Nobody has a higher claim to anything that you own than you because of the original laws of this republic. That's how it works. Okay, it's how it was founded. Now, what they're doing when they just sign a bill for how many billions was that they just sent to Ukraine today?
3 or something like that. I don't know. 6.
Yeah.
I who's keeping track anymore? They're not.
Right. They're robbing, and it's all being generated. It's not actually money. It's just debt contracts generated.
They're robbing the future is what they're doing.
They're robbing the productive value of your estate is what they are. They're making bets on you and your progeny. So yes, they are robbing the future also, but they're also robbing you right now, in the future, and right now, and all time. Because even when you die, that estate and the securities generated from that estate in the various trusts, through the various trusts, it keeps going. It keeps going and going and going. And that's why they're literally trying to make themselves Olympians on earth. That's what they're doing. They're trying to make themselves God. And when you really think about it, so I was reading an old treatise, And it was supposed to be about common law, but it was an exceptionally slimy lawyer who wrote it. And it's from the 1800s.
Is there any other kind of lawyer?
Very rarely is there a good lawyer. Yes, I agree with you. Very rarely. Once, but we do have him come through, like Justice Harlan. I mean, he told us that there was two different governments. He said we have the original government that lies dormant, and then we have this administrative government that they created outside of the Constitution. And that's a Chief Justice said that. And we've got like Judge Dale, who is a retired federal court judge, and he's written books, and he's trying to speak out about it. He quit. He was disgusted with it. And so occasionally you get an honest bar pirate, right? Who's not a pirate. He's just a bar member. But generally the bar is just piracy. And it's funny, they call themselves a bar because at law, or, the legal definition, at law of bar is an obstacle to overcome. It's something that stands in your way. It's the bar. So you plea at bar. It's an obstacle. But yeah, we do this. And when I finish getting my paperwork filed and everything, I'll share it with you. And I'll share with you my successes and my experiences. Absolutely fine. Because there's somebody specifically that there's a couple of people I'm immediately going to serve first. But process serve them. And we'll go over how to do all this stuff as well. But you guys need to start learning this stuff because we can stop this. They're laughing at you. They send $3 billion to Ukraine. It's basically your sweat equity and your children's future sweat equity and all this stuff. And they don't actually have any money. They print it off of your slavery, the contract that they have that guarantees them the right to the productive value of your estate. That is how they're able to generate these contracts. That is their consideration that makes the contract valuable, is your future productive value. The amount of traffic tickets they're going to get off you, the amount of taxes, Social Security they're going to get off of you, and every other way that they fucking generate income. The corporations are all in on it too. You're technically a wage slave of your corporation. They were completely complicit in creating the system. Like I said, Ford, GM, and is primarily Rockefeller with because the hospitals are complicit in declaring you to be abandoned property. The doctors are complicit in doing this. Now, these days, whether or not they just follow a process or they actually know what they're doing, when this first started back in the 40s, they knew what they were doing. So they were complicit. And guess who created the medical system that was blossoming in the 40s? It was Rockefeller. And the same education system that doesn't teach you law or critical thinking or how to be a producer and not a consumer. This is every single conspiracy, what people call conspiracy, that we have all been looking into for years, comes back to this. This is why. The globe lie, this is why. Everything, this is why. So they can administer your estates, because it's the only way to be able to enslave a free people and tell them what to do while simultaneously following the law and not incurring the wrath of the law, which is just how that works. They do follow the law. Everything they're doing until you claim your estate is 100% lawful. They are operating constitutionally. They're just operating outside of it through contract and the 14th Amendment. But they 100%, and this has been the intention of evolution, of the globe, of the change of the education system, the modern allopathic pharmaceutical system, because it's all about the birth, the delivery. When you deliver something, that's what a carrier does, and you inform, right? Which means to give, to convey to, and sign title over, right? So that's what you're doing. When you register, you're signing title over. Like this whole, and that would never happen in the original medical system because there wasn't really like a centralized medical system with a birth registry and all that shit. All that shit was created by Rockefeller and the car moguls. They did the same thing. They automatically send the allodial title to your car as the manufacturer's certificate of origin. Well, when you go to a dealership and you buy a car with a driver's license to a specific state, say Michigan or Wisconsin, Virginia, whatever, the dealership automatically sends the original title, the manufacturer's certificate of origin, to your daddy. Because when you present that license, your permission to travel and to conduct business, which are your natural rights, when you present a license to do that, what you're doing is saying, yeah, I'm an infant here. Send this to my dad. The word patriotic literally means that. Patre. It's daddy.
Mm-hmm. Who's your daddy?
Who's your daddy? It's the United States, right? corporation. So there, that's what I wanted. So I hope everybody has a better understanding of trust, usufruct a little bit, a little bit better. And now for, say, I probably run it till 1, maybe a little after 1, we can go through some videos or some interesting just discussion about current events. That's fine with me. So say North Carolina, because the North Carolina thing they're doing is ridiculous.
That's fucking crazy, man.
They send billions of dollars to Ukraine, send $750 debit card loans. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
They sent that as a contract. How can people not see that as 5th generational warfare? Used weather weapons to destroy the area in order to take these people's property and get them under basically one-sided contract.
Yep.
And tell them you're going to bulldoze their relatives' bodies. There's almost nothing. No, there's almost nothing more disrespectful than that, because like that's cause for war by itself. And North Carolina, here's the thing, North Carolina is its own country. It's up to those people. The fact that they're taking benefits from the very enemy who fucking did this to them is why they're infants. And what they need to do is go and grab their boom boom sticks and clean up the area. You know what I mean? Get some gas bags and some, just limited to what I could, but it needs to happen. And it's, they keep pushing it. They want to see how far they can push it. They're going to find out. And people need to realize we have more guns in this country than every other military in the world combined. We have more guns in this country than there are hands to hold them. Why is this happening? Now, I, for one, am of the opinion we should take the peaceful route and use the law first and start hemming up their estates, just like I showed you guys earlier. That guy got that award against the prosecutor and the judge and the clerk, and one other person got awards against everything they own. He has a lien on it now. And all he did was use common law and the record. The court of record, he used a common law court of record and the county record to establish his status in the first place. That's it. And it worked. And I showed it to you tonight, and it's proof. It's on the government website, and they can't hide it because it happened, and it will happen, and it continues to happen. And it's so foolproof because it's exactly what they're doing, that there is no statute that they can write to close that gap. There's nothing they can do to stop it. Because the whole thing is, by claiming your estate under the original laws of this republic, you're not subject to statutes. There's nothing you can write. There's no hole to close. You have to abide by the inflexible common law. So a scumbag attorney I was telling you guys about earlier that wrote that book on common law, I started reading. He's like, yeah, common law is great. It's inflexible, but it has a few defects. And see, equity is so much more, there's so much more latitude for judicial interpretation, and you can deal with the nuances of a contract, and you can basically stop. He literally said this in the treaties. He says, you can stop somebody from doing something before they even do it with equity. It's called an injunction. Yeah, it's called a pre-crime, motherfucker. What do you mean? You can stop somebody from doing something before they did it. What does that even mean?
Right.
Yeah, I can't believe that shit. So I did have a couple videos I sent myself on Burn the Corporate Fiction Facebook page, and I want to remember what they were, first of all, because it was all throughout the week. And
Hey, Ryan, we got a question in chat.
okay, what is it?
It's from Joan Margaret. It says, wouldn't possession of your long-form birth certificate prove title to oneself because it is a pre-state birth certificate? If it's in my hand, how can they deny I have title to myself?
Okay, and that's understandable, but see, does it have your seal on it? And is it endorsed? Because the birth certificate is actually a check. Believe it or not, it is. That's why it's deposited at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. So, and then also, here's the other thing, and that's exactly how they do it. It's the check. It's a check. That's why it's what it is. So, and then here's the other thing about it. All you received in order for this scheme to work, and I'm not sure when you were born, and there's all sorts of different types of birth certificates, but in order for this scheme they're doing to work, they would had to have only given you an original copy of the original. But if you take and endorse it and put your seal, when you create one, over their seal and file that with your claim of your estate, It's now better than the original. It is the original now.
It's good to know.
Yeah. So, and I understand what you're saying, but see, the whole presumption isn't that you don't have any right to use the estate. The presumption is that you cannot manage it because you're an infant. And that's what you have to change on the record. They know that, you know, you're the trustee of that estate. And yeah, okay, you got a copy of the birth certificate. Cool. But it still doesn't give you any kind of superior standing unless you do what I said, which is to claim it on the record. And what you do when you claim it on the record is you have to give, it's all about the process. You have to give a time limit. So is if anyone who believes they have a superior claim to my estate must come forth within the next 90 days and submit proof that you have a superior claim, and you file that on the record, and then you send it as a notice to everybody that would be interested: Secretary of State, the governor, definitely your county probate judge should be like the first, number one on the list. And you know, the IRS, the comptroller of currency, and all those people, you just put everyone on notice and give them the 90-day opportunity to rebut it. And they're not going to, because they cannot. And so therefore, after the expiration of 90 days, or if you're currently in a court case and you file it and it's within the 90 days, you give them, you've already put them on notice. And when you go to court, they can counter it, but they're not going to be able to. So after that 90 days, that becomes law on the county record with a file number that is a lawful document that states your status, that puts forth your status, that nobody can counteract. There's nothing they can do. And if they do, that's why you put the contract on the record too. And then when they do, you send them a copy of that contract and start the administrative process. You got 120 days to either settle my estate or stop administering it. And you must put up this bond, this $3 million bond, or $6 or whatever you decide. You know, you have to be reasonable, but it can definitely be millions in case of fiduciary malfeasance. And if you go against my will, then you agree to arbitration of my choice, where the award will take place, you know, at my leisure and all that stuff. And, you know, you just basically airtight seal it up. I'm writing mine right now. That's why I said I would share it with you guys. But then you send them that contract, and that's the first notice. Okay. Then 30 days later, you send them another contract, right? They now have 90 days, right? Okay. Then you send them a third contract. You now have 60 days. You only have to give them 3 notices, and then you send them a notice of default after the third one. So after 60 days, when you get down to 30, you send them a notice of default, but you still give them an extra 30 days to fix the situation. This is how you remain in honor. Okay. And after that 30 days expires, then you can go get a declaratory judgment on them. And if they refuse to give you a declaratory judgment, then you just take them to arbitration. It's over with. And they're probably not going to show up to that either. I'm sure after enough of us do it to enough of them, they'll start showing up. But what are they going to say? They knowingly and willingly entered into the contract. If you actually read the judgment of that award, that's what the arbitrator says. Says, yeah, they definitely entered into the contract. He wasn't forced to enter into the contract. And the claimant was right. Or what do they call them? In arbitration is different. I think it's petitioner or something. I can't remember what they're called, but the words are different in each jurisdiction. So like in common law, you're a declarant, right? Or a claimant, but it's actually declarant, but you can use claimant. And then in equity, it's a bill, and that's where you're actually a claimant, right? And then in probate, it's a allegation, right? Which is ecclesiastical. It's an allegation, whatever. So anyways, that's how you do that. And then you take it to, and the arbitrator even agreed, like the contract was written properly. You did knowingly enter, because it's called a performance contract. So once they start administering your estate, you put them on notice with the contract, and then they continue by continuing with that knowledge, and you have to process serve them though also too. That's the whole thing. Everybody has to get the system down and understand this all has to be recorded. So you process serve them, so there's a record. Now they can't say they didn't get the contract, and what the contract says, once they had gotten it, whether they read it or not, that's their fault. They entered into the contract by continuing forward or backward, really. You know, I think about it like that. You know, do you get what I'm saying though?
Yes, gotcha.
Okay, so let's go see what these videos are I sent. And they may change the subject. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover tonight for you guys. If you guys don't want to stay for a little discussion afterward that I'm going to have for a few minutes, then I get it. And I'll see you next weekend with some more information and hopefully my paperwork done if I just need time. But let's see here. What did I send myself? So, oh yeah. Oh, this is perfect to show you guys. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll do this. I actually like this guy, and if he knew what I'm talking about on this channel, it would all make sense to him. It makes so much more sense to him, and his content is pretty good. He's comes from the more financial side of things, and I'm sure actually many of you have seen him because he's got a pretty large following he's acquired recently. So, share screen. And make sure that's not muted.
Jesus.
Finally figured out BlackRock's true purpose. Because the big banks have been controlling the world for decades before BlackRock came on the scene. Hundreds of years even. So what use do the big banks...
Before he says what he's going to say, let me tell you that Social Security is a trust, and it's also an indenture. It makes you federal personnel, right? And now what he's about to say is exactly how they use that money from the Social Security to as a big slush fund to pay for their wars and all their genocide and all their depopulation, which is kind of the same as genocide, but just general depopulation instead of one specific group of people. Check it out.
Banks have for this new upstart company called BlackRock. We've been doing a lot of research around this channel about how BlackRock works and what they are. And we've been learning how basically no matter where you look in the markets, BlackRock and Vanguard are the top shareholders of every company. And it doesn't matter what industry you look in, you're going to find their names at the top of every list, even in competing industries like oil and gas and green energy. And all along, I've been working on a theory that there has to be some reason why BlackRock is useful to the big banks and the money that controlled the world long before they came along. And I think I figured it out. Here's a list of all the biggest banks in the US. JP Morgan is the biggest, and they control $3 trillion of assets. Trillion with a T. If you've heard of the S&P 500, what that is the 500 biggest companies in the American stock market. That's companies like Apple and Microsoft and Amazon, Tesla, ExxonMobil. This graph is showing all the companies in the S&P 500, and the bigger the box they have, the more money their company is worth. And Apple is the biggest one. All combined, the S&P 500 is worth $36 trillion. So JP Morgan alone controls assets that are equal to almost 1/10 of more or less the whole US stock market, because the S&P 500 is most of the US stock market's value. That's a lot of power that JP Morgan has. But then imagine all of these banks all having similar interests and kind of being buddies and kind of getting along when they eat up all the smaller banks and keep control of the world for themselves. Let's not forget that a lot of the most powerful banking institutions of today came out of power systems that long outdate the United States of America. So why did they let this company named BlackRock come along and suddenly start controlling $10 trillion in assets? That's right. BlackRock controls more than 3 times as much assets as JP Morgan Chase does. And BlackRock was only founded like 30 years ago or something. The answer can be found in what BlackRock does. BlackRock manages funds like exchange traded funds and index funds, which most of our retirement money is invested with. Most of the money that BlackRock and Vanguard are playing with in the market is actually ours. It's actually our retirement money and our index funds and our exchange traded funds. You know, these banks seem awfully powerful when you see numbers like $3.2 trillion. But what if I told you that we actually have more money than that? That's right. And our power has been on the rise lately. In 2011, retail investors represented just 10% of the market. In 2021, retail investors were over 22% of the market, reaching $7.2 trillion of capital invested. And that's just the money that we're actually investing for ourselves. Do you remember what happened to GameStop? Money that average traders are putting into the market right now is more than double the money that JP Morgan Chase has in the market right now. But hold on, because it gets juicier. US retirement assets total up to $33.6 trillion. And surely, a big portion of this is the retirement funds of really rich people. But don't underestimate the power of numbers. There's a lot of normal people.
Hold on. See, that's where I'm talking about, where he doesn't really know what's actually going on. He's just now starting to discover what's actually going on, but you can tell he doesn't know about the stuff we're talking about on this channel tonight, because really wealthy people do not have retirement funds. They have investments, right? They have like multi-generational wealth. They don't have retirement funds. It's not a thing. But anyways, my bad. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Like us. And when you put those $33.6 trillion next to numbers like $3 trillion, you start to realize that we have an awful lot of power over these markets if we were going to wield it for ourselves. Problem is, these funds with companies like BlackRock and Vanguard, they wind up controlling almost 30% of the assets in the marketplace. It's complicated, and it depends on which numbers you go by. Like retirement accounts account for about 30% of the market. That's because a lot of retirement accounts are invested with things that are not stocks, like commodities or like bonds. But let me remind you that the S&P 500 is only worth $36 trillion. And if we weren't putting all of our retirement money away with a company like BlackRock or Vanguard, and we were the ones investing in these companies and then voting those shares because we were educated investors, it makes me wonder if we would vote to have people like the CEO of General Mills get paid $15 million a year. It makes me wonder if we would put up with our pharmaceutical companies pulling this kind of shit on us if we had a huge amount of voting power in those companies with our shares. But we're not, because most of our retirement money goes to BlackRock or to Vanguard so that they can invest it for us into the market, and they can have all the share voting rights that goes with all those shares. And all these banks can keep being the biggest players in the marketplace and controlling how it all works. No, I wonder how much all these banks total up to. Why don't we add up the top 8? Little math here came out to this. This is in millions, by the way. Let's make it into trillions so it's easier to see. Divide that number by 1,000,000. And in total, the top 8 banks control $12.14 trillion in assets, all combined. I'm sorry, 12 trillion? Yo, you guys are small fish. We're out here trading. Power to the people, motherfucker.
Not quite yet. But the funny thing is what he's missing, and it's been in a Supreme Court ruling. I'll actually find that for next show if I remember. It's there is only one bank in this country, and that's the Federal Reserve. I'd say he doesn't know if central banking works yet. He will if he keeps digging. And there is only one bank. That's why when he was talking about all those big banks are eating up all the smaller banks, that's the ultimate goal. That's why. And those banks were actually, they were passed down from the people who helped found the Federal Reserve when meeting at Jekyll Island when they concocted the plan for it. So, like I said, he's got some good content, and especially when it comes to like consumer goods and stuff like that, like the poison they put in shampoos and all that stuff. It's Cancel This Clothing Company. So if you guys never heard of him, check him out. He's got some good content. But that one right there I thought was interesting because that's what BlackRock's doing. They're playing with our Social Security funds and retirement money, 401k, all that stuff. That's why that stuff there. It's any kind of deferred retirement benefit becomes a secure. They can use it as collateral for securities or for contracts. That's our currency. That's what our currency is contracts. So you look at the dollar bill in your wallet right now, 2 people signed it. One dude owes another dude money, and that's what we're trading with each other. There's no money. There's no money right now. Any creditor is trying to come out. There's no lawful consideration. So there's no valid contract anywhere in this country. There's no fucking money. It's debt. A promise to pay does not constitute payment. I've shown that Supreme Court decision on this show. I actually have a whole bunch of them saved in my bookmarks. I'll go through them and I'll bring them all up because I have to for my paperwork anyway. And it'll be beautiful. But now everything we've discussed tonight, one of the last videos I want to show, I think you guys will appreciate. You may have heard it, but now after hearing the information I've given you tonight, it'll take on a whole new light if you've been with me for the whole program. And I'm programming to think for yourself. What'd you say?
Another question in chat.
What is it?
From Dr. D. Head. Will I be able to provide remedy for a case I already pled to?
Okay, so, well, the case has been disposed, but you could, yes, you can. It's not necessarily, it is remedy, but it's what you would do is you'd file a claim against them for the entire event that happened. If you didn't actually hurt anybody and it was just part of this administrative tyranny that they got where they're telling you how to use your property and all that stuff, you file an at-law counter, or it wouldn't be a counterclaim because the case is already disposed. So it'd be an at-law, it'd be a declaration against them for like trespass and trespass on the case. And if they took something from you, replevin. That's why you have to learn these common law actions. But yeah, you could absolutely, and then you could file that on them because they didn't actually act under law at all. What they did was they used color of law to commit a crime against you. So therefore, you can use common law to redress that crime that happened, because what they have it appearing like to the public is that they administered justice. There's that word administration, only happens with treasury. They administered justice, when in reality, they committed a common law crime under the color of law, which means statute. Again, that's private conscience, and you have to be under contract to be subject to it. So yes, you could, 100%. Even though the case has already been disposed. The only difference is from Mojo's is it would not be a counterclaim, it'd just be a claim because the crime is already said and done with. There's no court, nothing. So you create your own court. That's what we're doing when we do this stuff. We create our own court of record. And you go down to the county clerk and you file an at law, and you have to make sure you say at law, because the clerks are one of the most important people, and they know what's going on, all of them. They will try to give you an equity case number, which is why you have to know what the jurisdictions are. You can't even challenge jurisdiction if you don't know what the 5 jurisdictions of American jurisprudence are. I'll go through them one more time. Common law. And in order to leave common law, you either have to be disputing a contract, which is equity, right? You have to be dealing with merchant trade on the seas, which is admiralty, right? You have to be in the military, which is military jurisdiction, it's court martial, or you have to be under the administration of a probate court as either an infant or just pretty much as an infant, or yeah, that's how they get you. So any of those other 4, you have to be under some sort of contract or presumed agreement, where in the last one, probate's the only one where they can presume an agreement or presume a certain state of being, like, oh, the heir is missing and this person using it is just a trustee, and we're just going to make this up and presume this is what's happening, and they're not rebutting it, so now it's a fact, and that's how we're going to keep going. You know what I mean? So if you don't know those 5 jurisdictions, everybody just goes criminal or civil. Well, that's not a thing, because criminal is actually even it's under common law, but it's a little separate. It's like when there's actually an infamous crime, you have to have a grand jury come and indict. And then the grand jury is the one who deals with the entirety of the case, right? They're the tribunal of the case. So in a common law court of record, the magistrate is always separate from the tribunal. The tribunal is the only one who has the judicial authority, and that would be the jury. The magistrate is just a paper pusher. That's it. That's all they do. So the thing I was going to show you guys that should make a lot more sense now, and you'll appreciate it. I know my dad's seen it several times. He's a big fan of Colonel Edward Mendel House, actually. He wants to be just like him. Didn't you? No?
Yeah, I'll do that. Sure.
He's a really good guy. Let's check it out. Oh, wait. Did I pull up the YouTube? Yeah, okay, I did. Can you hear it?
Nope.
You hear it? Okay. That's what I was afraid of. I thought I did.
You gotta go by tab, yeah.
I know. Every single time you have to actually pick the damn tab. I know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. StreamYard should fix that shit. But here we go. So a little history. Colonel Edward, well, first of all, he gave himself the title of Colonel, which shows you what kind of dude he was. Call me Colonel, right? But call me Major. I am General Ryan Wells, right? Fuck off. So anyway, this guy
I am Grand Supreme Leader Dave.
Right. I am Jedi Master Ryan Wells. Right? Yeah, there you go. So
myself Peyton's nobility, man.
So this guy was the handler of Woodrow Wilson. He was assigned by the Rothschilds to make sure that the Federal Reserve Act was passed into law, which they had no authority to do because they had power that was vested from us. They couldn't vest that into somebody else. And then he also made sure we were entered into World War One, and well, listen, this is what. So now there's no actual nobody's ever been able to verify that he actually said this. So I want to use that as a preface, just so you guys know. I couldn't find that quote anywhere. But when you hear what's said in this quote compared with what I've been telling you for the last couple hours, it's exactly what's happening. And I can prove what I've been telling you, even if I can't find the historical source of this quote, but it's exactly what's happening.
Edward Mendell House, and what he had to say in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson, president between 1913 and 1921, from the private papers of Woodrow Wilson. Quote, "Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology."
So that right there, the ancient system of pledging, the reason they used, and this is why I believe this was really said, is because the system of pledging is a contract that does not require mutual consideration. So the state pledges you, the feds don't have to give anything in return for the pledge, right? Or like your mother pledges you, the state doesn't have to give anything in return for the pledge, because a pledge is what like knights did to kings and whatnot. It's the one area of agreement in law that does not require mutual consideration, specifically pledging. And the fact that he said through the ancient system of pledging, which it is ancient, makes total sense.
"We can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as chargeback for our fiat."
He's not talking about security as in safety. He's talking about security as in surety. And he says that will stand as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency, meaning it's the collateral for the contracts they're about to create and use as currency, or that they plan to use as currency after they get everybody out of the gold and silver certificates.
Paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be.
And they cemented that with the Social Security Act, because that's why every job, every employer requires a Social Security number. All the corporations are in on it.
Be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans,
which is contracts. That's it. Secured transactions, contract with surety. In order to have a contract, you have to have surety, right? And that's what holding the security agreement over them, right? It's what they're saying is that it's debt slavery, right? So the security agreement that they make, they hold over you because they have mortgaged you, and you are the liable party essentially, right? As a citizen under the federal government, you are a franchise of the federal government. And so when these municipalities pull you over you're here as a foreigner in your state when you should be one of the people, but you're a resident. And as I showed on my show the other day, I don't know if my dad's seen it or not, I went through a book called Elementary Law from 1939, and the guy lays it out perfectly. And he says there's two types of people that live in a state. There's a state citizen, and then there's a resident alien. The resident alien is called resident for short, and the state citizen is called citizen for short. And the difference between them is that the resident does not have the same protections that the citizen has. And the resident is a foreigner, though he enjoys the protection of the state during his stay, right? He is not entitled to the protections and securities of the state, but he also doesn't have to serve in the military of the state, which is something I wanted to show you guys tonight, but we're running out of time. And Michigan actually had a little war with Ohio, and that's in one of our statutes that I was reading. And they're talking about securing the southern border of Michigan because each state had its own military all the way up until after the Civil War, because we are our own countries. And the feds are absolutely foreign to every single one of us.
By unknowingly or unwittingly delivered the bills of lading to us will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent.
Delivering the bill of lading. That's your birth certificate. It's a manifest. It's a bill of lading. Lets them know exactly what just manifested into their territory. And places them, it's a document that places that product into their possession, into their possession, ownership, authority.
Forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given commercial value, designated to keep us a profit that will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans. And if by accident...
Until the internet, baby. Think about that. How much time it would have taken me or even you guys or anybody to find all of this information that we've been talking about tonight without the internet. The very thing that they're using to try to enslave us is the very thing that's going to undo us. Instead of having to go around to every state library in the nation, look at their stuff, or go to all these different law libraries, I can just simply search databases on my computer and literally take that from years to months, or even lifetimes to just years. In my case, that's literally what happened. I would have never been able to learn this in one lifetime without the internet. So 1 in a million, that's over with, buddy.
1 or 2 would figure it out. We have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrant in the form of benefits and pledges.
I just want to hammer this home. Registrant. We are not supposed to have a registry. That is a Roman civil law thing that splits the title to whatever is registered and gives a superior title to the entity you're registering it to. Period. We have a record system, not a registry system. Even for our land, they brought over the Torrens registry system, or they brought over the registry system by a guy named, his last name's Torrens, I forget, but if you look up Torrens registry, you can see it. And they started putting all of our land into this registry system, and then they didn't have to trace the title back to the original land patent. Now they could just be only concerned with the person who has it. And that's what the attorneys wanted, because not only did they want to take your property, but they're lazy and fucking stupid and didn't want to have to do all that work.
This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest of expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president as our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. Having established plausible deniability, even if people become enlightened that they had a remedy and pursued it, the attorneys, judges, and legislators could claim that they did not understand the people's claims, especially if the technical requirements for achieving it were not followed pursuant to statutory requirements.
See, what we've done here, and what VSOF and the people on his crew are doing there, is we've taken it to its foundation, and we are removing ourselves from statute, because the statutes are only made through the authority that we vested, that we also retain. When you vest something, you don't give it away. You're just letting them wear a vest of your authority. That's why it's called a vestment. And you retain it. So anything they can do, you can do, first of all. Second of all, the Magna Carta is exactly where this filthy fucking Roman horseshit got mixed in with common law. One would almost think that the barons were complicit in a certain way, and I've heard that from other people. Now I actually understand what they mean by that. I wasn't going to go into it tonight, and I'm still not, but at a future date. And I think the barons are now the heads of the corporation. Their descendants are, and they kind of made a deal with the king and the corruption in the church and all that stuff. And then now here we are. But what you're doing with claiming your estate and using only common law, extricating yourself from the contracts, because there are other documents you want to file, but the main ones for an immediate throwing a wrench in their gears are the ones I've covered tonight. And we're taking it to its origins, where the registry and the whole idea of usufruct got mixed with common law, which is why the Magna Carta was written. And then we're using that. So now we don't care that you can say you do not understand me, but it's not going to matter, because what I'm saying is lawful and it's based on actual knowledge of the law. And I'm sorry, Your Honor, that they don't teach you law at the law schools anymore, and they only teach you process. But you're not going to win, because this is law. And if you choose to ignore me, I'll take everything you own, because arbitration is one of the most ancient forms of law. And that is why they cannot do anything about it. That's why the judge has a lien on everything he owns right now, is because they cannot do anything about it. It predates civil law. It's the first form of court in Rome was arbitration. So we just take it to their own fucking court and beat them with it.
Requiring the public schools to teach civics, government, and history classes out of federally approved, politically correct textbooks written by the publishing houses, owned by the owners of the Federal Reserve, would assure that the people would not discover the remedy for a long time, if ever. I would recommend that everyone read Fruit from a Poisonous Tree by Melvin Stamper, Melvin Stamper, Stamper. That is Fruit from a Poisonous Tree. This is out of chapter.
That's a great book. War Against You on Rumble, who often features my content, actually, which I appreciate. He's actually got that entire book in audio form. It's broken up in about like 30-minute segments, and you can just go listen to it on Rumble, War Against You channel. He's got it's fruit from a poisonous tree. And that's what it means, is what they did was fraud ab initio, which means from the beginning. And so any fruits of a poisonous tree are bad. They're not, you can't use, and the entire system that we're under right now is nothing but fruits of a poisonous tree. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is learn the poison, learn how they poisoned it, and then you can be like, no, dude, no, you can't do that. Like, you just made up this whole fucking fantasy world of shit that you're trying to say that I'm under now. No, it doesn't work like that. In fact, you're stealing. And guess what the penalty for common law theft is? First time, doesn't matter. First time you get caught stealing, guess what the penalty is? What's death? By hanging. Right? That's where they say you caught a thief red-handed. That's because you don't even have to take him to trial. If somebody's stealing from you, you can just shoot him. That's why they say caught a thief red-handed, because he's covering his fucking wound with his hand.
Of fruit from a poison.
So what do you guys think about that?
Interesting.
It's exactly what I've been explaining. And no, I didn't explain it from that. I actually know how to prove everything that Edward Mendel House said he was going to do. I can prove how they've done it. I can show you. They actually did do that, except for he was wrong about one thing, where the judges and lawyers and everybody, because one thing they didn't count on was there being us lawyers, common law lawyers. The people can be lawyers. That's how we became a republic in the first place. And with that being said, a lawyer is different than an attorney. Attorney's job is to transfer homage or service from one feudal lord to another. So when you have an attorney in court, he's taking you from feudal service to the United States corporation and transferring your homage and service to the administrator of that court to create a constructive trust with you as the res, in order to make you under the service of that administrator and have to perform the obligations of that trust. So I did pull up another one we can look at, and I don't remember what it was. So we're all going to be remembering now, because this was probably at the beginning of the week, and it looks like a bunch of people. Yeah, we'll just see what it is, and I'll see why I sent it to myself. Whoops. Yeah, let's refresh it so it starts at the beginning. Because for some reason, I think this is an Instagram reel, and I don't do Instagram or any of that horseshit.
No.
And yeah, fuck that. And for some reason, it doesn't let you rewind it. It's their way to try to make you get Instagram. So I'll unmute it. Let's check it out.
We actually fund ourselves and then work out what dividend is needed to pay. So we kind of work that it's a great business to be in, central banking. Print money and people believe it. And we actually fund ourselves and then work out what dividend is needed to pay. So we kind of work that it's a great business to be in, central banking. Print money and people believe it.
Okay, that's why I sent it. We print money and people believe it. Because it's not money. It had to be contracts. And the contracts, oh, this is interesting. Let's check this out. Well, it stayed on that page. It's weird. I closed that page. I didn't know that that's how that worked. Oh, I didn't close it. I just, oh, okay. I see what happened. All right.
And
Oh, that's not what I just put on. What the hell? Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's why it's YouTube. Gotcha. That's where I sent it from. So I just scroll through some reels, like, you know, in an extra moment. And because of the algorithmic selectiveness of the reels, it's funny how that works against, I'm sure my dad knows what I'm talking about, how that works against them also. Is like basically, so if you only look up truth content and like what's really going on, then because of the AI they have in charge of their social media thing, it only ever gives you that. It's kind of beautiful because, like, you know, that's probably a bug that they haven't worked out yet. So that's what I, yeah, like, wait, that you definitely don't want me to know this stuff. So,
especially since like how the what they're talking about right now, you know, you've had some of your big talking faces coming out talking about how we should limit free speech, rewrite the First Amendment.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? Like, you can do that. Yeah,
you
no,
can't do that. That's stupid as shit. These people, see, and that's geared toward people that think that it's that document that gives you those rights, when right in the preamble it says endowed by your creator. You know, and last I heard, these asshats in DC didn't create me. So fuck them.
Unalienable can be taken as you cannot put a lien against it, right? But alienable during the time that because that's what I used to think it meant also, which it does actually in a way by definition of what it actually means. That means that also, because that would be a way of alienating. But to alienate
you can't even give it away. You can't even give it away.
Yeah, alienating is to give away. You cannot give away your rights. So like the whole idea of contracting your rights away. And I want to point this out too. People think, oh, it's just a Declaration of Independence. Declaration is the common law action. When you are filing something against someone else, it's called a declaration. That is a legal document under common law, and it is a charge against the king. That's a common law charge against the king. It's a declaration. People don't realize that. Even the guy at VSOF hasn't realized that yet. It's a declaration. It's a common law. It's an action at law is what it is. That's why when we won the war, nobody could say it was unlawful. You can't say, oh, I was against the law. You can't do that. You're stealing. No, they didn't say anything like that because it was done properly through due process. And we only resorted to force when we had to. So this is what I talk about, how towns used to be in communities and people like that. That's why they broke up the family, the community, because this happened. And now I remember this one. So check this out.
The town turned into a war zone against crooked politicians. In August 1946, Athens became the scene of a showdown between returning World War II veterans and Sheriff Paul Cantrell's corrupt political machine. Fed up with Cantrell's dirty tactics like voter intimidation and rigged elections, the veterans formed the GI Nonpartisan League to take him down. When deputies blocked African-American voters from casting their ballots, things got ugly fast. The vets, armed and determined, assaulted the county jail where the rigged ballot boxes were kept. And after a tense standoff and gunfire exchange, they blew the jail open to retrieve the ballots. Deputies gave in, and the vets candidates were declared winners, sparking reform in the county. Amen to the Second Amendment. Would you believe that a small Tennessee town...
That's exactly right. That's exactly what North Carolina should be doing right now. Are you kidding me? You gonna mess with these people that just came home from World War II? You think they're afraid to end you, man? They just came from a fucking horrible, one of actually the worst in the history of mankind that's recorded. And then you think they're not going to shoot you? Get the fuck out of here. Right? That was pretty amazing. I like that one. I do. Yeah. And I think there may be, what else did I? Let's see what this one is. Why not? I should try to do this every week, because I send myself these to show you guys, because they pertain to what we're discussing, and I never actually get around to it because I am pontificating. That's what I like to say. I like to pontificate. I speak at great length on one subject and just kind of beat it to death sometimes, and then it takes me a minute to realize I'm doing that, and then yeah. So, but let's check this out.
Done in by this court case alone. This court case is proof. All the proof you need, if you go read it, it's 100% proof of the duplicate system that operates from your social, and you didn't know about it. I didn't know about it, but it's there.
This is exactly what I've been talking about. I remember this one too.
It's a fact. Now, how about the court? There's many bonds, but we're going to just use this one. Any initial case, whether it's a traffic violation or you're going to court for child support, divorce, it don't matter. Your case number creates a CUSIP number that gets traded on the stock market, and they file this bond right here. SF24 bid bond. This is the first time you go to court. This bond is filed. It goes to the Department of Fiscal Services, and they collect off your account that you don't know you have. A check gets cut straight to the courthouse, but you didn't know about it. So there you go. Here's the real crazy part. Why the judges and nobody can talk about it, because they're all part of this system that was in place before they even got there. Court Registry Investment System. What is it? Well, they pull up all these bonds and they get traded on the stock market. When they retire or when the bond matures, they get a check. Yeah.
It's a 501(c)(3) too. It's nonprofit slush fund. And this is real shit. You can actually look up the IOLTA. It's called the interest on lawyer trust accounts.
They are literally incentivized to find you guilty, and they all get percentages. The judge gets the highest. You got the prosecutor or the DA. You got the court clerk, and you even got the defense attorney. Oh yeah. When they sign off, they get in a piece of this. And that is a fact. And that is why I say the Bar Association is a ball and chain around our entire legal system. And that's why it stands for British. So the banks are done in by this court case alone.
Accreditation registry. He probably got hit for that because they try to say that it does not. But I've actually gotten, and I have it on my phone, I've gotten GPT to admit that to me. When I simply said, what does Bar Association stand for? So this is a British accreditation registry, or registrar rather, and that's where they register as basically pirates. And yeah, it's great. But that's exactly right. That's what, and so it reminded me, I have something here that you guys might want to look at. So the guy whose arbitration award, he also got his bond information too, because this is part of the process you can use. Is if you can get your bond information, which you can, which I was trying to get Mojo to do, but he was encountering difficulties, and you're always going to encounter difficulties, it's like most of the time, but you can get them if you know the law and be like, you can't hide this from, we have the right to, we don't yield our sovereignty to the servants that work for us, and we have a right to all of your records. So, and that's been upheld. And so you get your fucking bond information. Michigan, and each state has a different way of getting the bond information, but every court case, no matter what it is, has to be bonded because it's not their property and they're administering a trust, which is why they get paid out of the Social Security, like he was just talking about, is because it's part of administrating the Social Security trust. That's why I said it's considered a benefit to go to jail or get a ticket or anything, because they're reforming you. It all goes back to the whole, when the church used to issue settlement certificates after the king gave the church control over the paupers, the church's job, the paupers, which means poor person, were indentured to the church, and the church took it upon themselves to reform the paupers so they could not be paupers anymore. And you can imagine where they go with that, jail is one of those things. And that's exactly what they're doing here with the court system. That's why all these courts are ecclesiastical courts. They're priests. That's why they wear black robes. They're operating under ecclesiastical probate jurisdiction, which is and has always been since it was created by William the Conqueror, a jurisdiction of the church. And they're administering your estate, telling you how to use your property because you're an infant, you can't handle your own affairs. And so they consider going to jail or forcing you to take a jab or whatever the case may be as philanthropy. That's why you really have to look at those philanthropic organizations. That's why all the billionaires start one, is because the whole system around the world is based on the administration of infant estates. Not just here. I don't care where you're watching me from. If Australia, England, New Zealand for Flatzoid, all of them, it's all the same. It's all the same system. It's all probate. It's ecclesiastical, right? And after I learned that, it made more sense why the front of the court area code was 666 for me when I was on a Zoom call. I actually showed you that, didn't I, Dad? I showed you the picture. I don't know where the hell the picture is now, but I snapped the picture of it. It's freaking 666. So you can believe it or not, but it's true. And so this guy got it. So if you can call and get the bond, and each state has a different process to get the bond. And you call because the bond is always taken out in your name. They never take the bond out in their name, but that's why it always costs them money if they lose, because they have to cover the bond. The bond has to be covered. So that's usually what your court fees and everything that's attached to whatever trust that they create, whether it's probation or whatever. It all goes towards the bond, right? And so that they basically make their 33% in their IOLTA without actually using anything of their own, right? It's brilliant. It's evil, but it's brilliant. So check this out. This guy actually got his bond. It's the same guy who I showed you on the Colorado Secretary of State won this arbitration award against everything for the prosecutor, clerk, and judge, everything they own. So he filed this. And here's the bond. Now look, because they are the administrator of your estate, it's called Seneca Insurance Company, right? It's for $11,000. And the way that they're able to obtain the bond in your name is because as the administrator of your estate, just like a guardian would, or somebody who has, they take power of attorney. Right here, it says power of attorney over you. And then they sign for you. See, it says executing agent, attorney in fact, which shows you that this bond is happening in common law, because that's what an attorney in fact is. So they've kept common law for themselves and used presumption to pull you out of it, take control of your estates, and then put you under all of these other foreign jurisdictions, but they still have to use common law to do stuff like this. Because the power of attorney is taken in common law, presuming you're an infant. And that's why the judge, I believe, or whoever it is, the prosecutor, whoever took power of attorney, signed as an attorney in fact, right? So it says the authority, and notice it says executing attorney or executing agent, attorney in fact. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's what it says right next to the signature. But the bond is in his name. It says right here, defendant Brent Andrew Nelson. And this whole thing is a power of attorney. That's how they generate the securities that they then take 33% of and put into their own 501(c) retirement accounts and cash out on at the end of their career, on top of their salaries and whatever other backdoor deals they have with defense attorneys to give clients lesser sentences. This whole thing is just a big mobster racket of extortion. You guys care to weigh in on this? Yay, nay? It's kind of jaw-dropping, isn't it?
Sorry, man. Sorry. No, I got to get off here, man. I got to get this dog outside. She just let the longest fart I've ever heard a dog let. And I think that's a cue that she's got to go out. Yeah.
I'm actually going to shut this down because I ran an hour over than I had intended in the first place, and I have some paperwork to work on, so that's cool. We can actually end this all together. Yeah. So Let me stop the
As
screen.
you said, Ryan, it's extortion, and I'd sure love to tell the judge right there to his face.
But you can't, because if you do that, now you're making a baseless allegation, because technically what he is doing in the first instance was legal. So at this point, actually, after serving them a notice of liability and saying what you said in court, you could tell them that actually what you're doing is it's theft. It's common law theft of my property. Yeah, 100%. And it is extortion. It's actually coercion, but those are both commercial terms, and we want to stick to what it is. It's replevin, right? It's trespass. It's absolutely, it's treason. Actually, if you take it in its entirety, it's 100% treason, because they're using the color of authority, the color of government, to basically rob you of your inheritance. Not basically, it's essentially, it's exactly what's going on. So anyway, you can hang out, Mojo, so I can talk to you for a few minutes. But to everybody who tuned in tonight, I always appreciate you guys. I'm working on my own paperwork, but in the meantime, like I said, email me. And, oh, by the way, one more thing I want to bring up. I'm not going to go long on it because I am getting off here, but I just wanted to show you guys this real quick. Sucks my dad got off because I want to show him that. But notice what's down here on the right-hand corner. I'll zoom in. Remember how I've been impressing on the importance of a seal and what that does? Right? And remember, attorney in fact, this bond is happening in common law. And what is right here? It says seal. 1978, New York. This is a corporate seal. It's not the same as like a house seal, but it is essentially the same. It's in the same vein. Like you wouldn't make your seal the same as this, because you wouldn't have to put the state, and you wouldn't, you obviously don't have an incorporated name. You don't just put seal in the center. You can put a Latin phrase on it, put House of Wilkinson for you, Mojo, and
Yeah.
you can, you know what I'm saying? Like you can do all that stuff. You can put the house of your last name, put a Latin phrase on it, put a picture in it, but it's your seal. It's your art. It's the honor of your family, and you're stamping this. And notice that the insurance company had to seal this bond. And it is taking place in common law. The seal is what does it more than even just the words. It's the seal that does it. And that's where I differ from VSOF, is that he's very good at what he does. He's very thorough. And in some cases, when we're trying to do this, and I appreciate his thoroughness, but when you're trying to do this for other people or get other people to learn how to do this, not everybody can learn as in-depth about this stuff as gifted people, which we cannot take credit for it because we were just made this way. But it's understandable that is. And really, it's just, hey, I've been found to be living. I'm the sole heir and executor in my estate. And, I'm of age and can handle my affairs, and I claim my estate, without fee, and that's how it's in the Magna Carta, and you fucking seal it and put it on the record, and you have to know the laws, which I've given on my last episode, and I can give again, of how to make the clerk file, or the recorder file it on the record, because it's their law too. They have to file it on the record. It's one thing they can never get rid of, and you have to know the laws. Supreme Court case to tell them, like, look, dude, I'll call the Department of Justice, or I will call the fucking sheriff, whichever you prefer, but you're breaking the law. File it on the record. You know what I mean?
And me stating it in court is actually putting it on the record as well.
Well, if you record it because you have opened a court of record, so stating it in court and the outcome of your court case this week, if they actually back off and dismiss it, you can just pay somebody to transcribe your recording, sign and seal it, have them sign it, and thumbprint it with red ink, and put that on the record. And that's actually better than anything you would have just said. You know what I mean? So
gotcha. I do. Yep.
Yeah, don't take their transcription, because they're going to lie and do what they've done the last couple times you've got transcriptions, where they try to act like they couldn't hear you and say inaudible and put like little dots like, oh, well, we're going to leave that out. because they're not a court of record. They do keep a record, but they're not a court of record. And so I've been using this term court of record a lot, and I need to clarify. A court of record actually has specific characteristics. And two of those main characteristics are, one, that a court of record must proceed according to the course of common law. So a court of record cannot be anything other than common law. And a court of record is the equivalent and superior in some cases to the Supreme Court of the entire country. So what you do in your court of record is the equivalent of what a Supreme Court would decide in their ruling. And then if you decide something, the Supreme Court cannot rule against you. That's what I mean by your record is powerful. And that is enshrined in Supreme Court decision. A superior court is as binding on this court as this court would be on any other court, is essentially what he says. Not verbatim, but I'll get that for you guys too. But that's a fact. And so that's the record. The seal, though, right here is what does it, because there's an ancient law of sealing things, and I'm gonna tell you guys the truth. I've been looking into it, and I haven't had a lot of time since I figured that out. And I'm still looking into it but I do know, and I've been able to pin down that it goes to the Bible and to Jesus Christ and what the seal represents in relation to. And I know that sounds crazy to you atheists or people who are not, have no belief in the Bible and stuff, but it's true. All of this is actually very biblical. So the entirety of this situation is, just if you do a brief research on the law, the Jews created most of the jurisdictions of law that exist. In common law, when you really look at it, it seems to be the only jurisdiction that takes into account the 11th Amendment and make that the law. He says, I've come to fulfill the law. And then he says the 11th commandment, or his commandment, he says, do no harm, or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right. So, and that is the essence of common law, the entirety of it. So the other jurisdictions were created by the Jews, who are the judges, the lawyers, not saying that in a derogatory way. That's just historical. It's always been that way. Like when England started adopting admiralty or any of these other types, they got them from Jews, the Jewish people. It's where it came from, So, and then common law seems to be the only jurisdiction, which we were founded on, that takes into account the New Testament, which would make sense. So anyways, with that is pretty much my presentation tonight. And you guys feel free to email me. And if you guys are interested in, Dr. D had said jaw dropping. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. And I hope it helped you. And if you guys need some reading material on common law with forms, but I advise that you email me before you do anything so I can kind of give you an outline of how you should probably do it. You know what I mean? But basically, our law is a superior law. And we need to start using it. And I will see you next weekend. I hope you guys have an awesome night. Thank you for joining me.
Good night. Much love.